The virtual reality game Tower of Trials is in this category, when Korean gamers, for their dedication, threw themselves into the Tower of Trials with fervor. The narrative surrounding the game had shifted from anticipation to disappointment, as players found themselves ensnared in a web of unrelenting challenges and absurd difficulties. These seasoned players, considering it a personal hobby to outwit game developers, sacrificed basic necessities for an entire year in pursuit of conquering the virtual monstrosity. However, as the years rolled by, the truth emerged. The Tower of Trials was an insurmountable fortress. A gatekeeper, seemingly invincible, stood tall at the pinnacle of this virtual nightmare. The game's challenges ranged from a polar region with a bone-chilling temperature of -60 degrees to an extensive labyrinth spanning over 10,000 kilometers. What was intended to be entertaining turned out to be sheer torture, and the gaming community ultimately declared the Tower of Trials bankrupt. Yet, amid the ruins of this digital catastrophe, a handful of persistent players remained. Undeterred by the overwhelmingly difficult odds, these dedicated individuals pressed on, determined to conquer the seemingly impossible. One such player, bloodied and worn, questioned the reality of his triumph as he stood at the 50th floor, having meticulously memorized every detail through countless replays over 11 years. As he contemplated sharing his journey on platforms like YouTube, a surprising system notification disrupted his thoughts. The game developers expressed gratitude for his continued participation and announced an impending reboot refresh in 12 hours. Confused and incredulous, the player questioned the financial viability of such updates, considering the game's lack of profitability. Facing the reality that this game was no longer sustainable, the player decided to retire from the Tower of Trials. The live broadcasts, once a source of income, were now destined to become a memory. He has no family to take care of, but he's already 27 years old. He can't live on just 500K a month forever. Also, the captain should be told that the guy won't be playing sports for a while. It was once said that he should have been a professional fighter, but now money was definitely more important than sports. The live feed is live. People in the chat room started to get active. Some of them were wondering if it was too early to start the broadcast today. Some of them were discussing the amount of food on the table. After gathering his thoughts, the guy started to speak. "He knows I want to tell you something." In the comments immediately began to wonder what this atmosphere is, and whether Heck wants to announce about marriage. However, after a short pause, he laughed and said that he was just building up the atmosphere. Drinking another glass, he thought that tomorrow he should officially announce that he was canceling the streamings in the morning. Heck suffered from such a terrible problem of mankind as a hangover. However, even so, his first thought was to quickly post a video of the Tower of Trials walkthrough. Turning on his computer, Gene Heck saw a live broadcast with an unusual title. "The Tower of Trials has really appeared." His interest overpowered him and already his cursor was on the enter button. "Wow, hens, you see that? Everyone can see it, right?" Came from the live broadcast. "I found out about it because I was informed by a hen melon-flavored watermelon. It's from a game, Tower of Trials, that launched 11 years ago. Can you believe it?" Panic started in the background. Just a second, the sky turned blood red in color. No way. Gene Heck thought this kind of thing happens when you first start the Tower of Trials. As soon as he thought this, a system window appeared in front of him, announcing the completion of the first stage of updating the new version of Tower of Trials. System windows appeared in front of each person one after another. All players must advance to the next floor of the tower in 90 days. If they fail, humanity will be destroyed. Phase 1 of the new version, Test Tower upgrade, has been completed. People's level of adaptability and acceptance of reality is increasing amazingly, the system windows reported. "We need to stay calm," flashed through Gene Hayok's mind. He realized that if Test Tower had actually become a reality, then now was not the time to hesitate. He hurried to the place where he could obtain this item. After all, the world would probably be destroyed. Heck's heart was ready to jump out of his chest with excitement. At this time, panic broke out in the central city. People were looking for ways to leave Seoul for Busan or somewhere else, most importantly not to stay in Korea. However, that damn tower had appeared overseas as well, so there was no point in going there. The people in the city were sure that if they stayed in Seoul, they would be foolish and die for nothing. Meanwhile, Gene Hayok had already reached the subway station. He realized that now was not the time to run, now was the time to go forward. On the Korean server, this metropolitan area had been selected as one of the off-tower areas, and if you looked at the countries, there were only 40 of them, and this was the closest of them all. "You have entered an event area," reported the system notification. The people who were here were people who had played the first part of Tower of Trials. Everyone was just watching each other, since there was nothing else to do for now. The number of items that were soon to appear here was limited, and if they were lucky, there would be around 5. You are Kong Jin Heok? The blonde-haired guy asked, turning to Heck. Haha. That's right, Kong Jin Heck. Wow, you came here too. That's right, you've been doing nothing but playing with toys all day and night, hiding in the corner of the room. The guy who addressed the main character was Paprikativi's BJ partner and 500k subscriber on YouTube, Lee Jong-soo. People like him are commonly referred to as successful celebrities. Along with this, Jong-soo is a representative of the company that Jin Heok was also a part of. Isn't this a good time for a live broadcast? Jin Heok sarcastically asked. However, he only received an oblique glance at the other players in response, which was accompanied by a rhetorical question about the appropriateness of such a broadcast. More importantly, what floor did you get to? After all, you played this game so hard. Why hide such a thing from a colleague with whom you work in the same company? Let's share it, and we'll enjoy it together. Colleagues repeatedly ran through Heck's mind. In the company Jong-soo created, there were many BJs who were cheated because of the unfair contract. The more broadcasts they did, the deeper they sunk into this quagmire, and their protesting voices were mercilessly drowned out by the force of the huge lawlessness. Eventually, in the course of time, the colleagues with whom Jin Heck had been close and with whom he had risen from the lowest ranks gradually left the company. I know you're pretty good at playing and making mouth-watering mock-bands, and just for you, I'm willing to change your contract terms to a more favorable one, Jong-soo was about to start trying to negotiate with Jin Heok. However, one thing he hadn't calculated was that the world had changed. So now Heok was able to punch Jong-soo so that 2 of his teeth came out. That makes me feel better, Heck thought. Almost immediately, however, he glanced behind his back gradually. He should start to appear. It was about the unusual tree that had appeared in the fountain in the center of the event district. The mangrove tree was what the players in the area called it. Everyone marveled at the fact that it was just like the one in Tower of Trials. In his thoughts, Heck praised himself, making sure his memory was in order. The mangrove greed tree continues to grow. A system notification alerted. Immediately afterward, appetizingly ripe fruit began to appear on the branches. These wondrous and appetizing fruits have the effect of raising dexterity, strength, and mana stats. It was no doubt a good item, but there were only 4 fruits for the entire tree. Pretty cruel, flashed through Heck's mind as he realized what was going to happen. While all the players were trying to pick the fruit and fighting each other, Jong-soo was trying to convince Heok to team up and split the fruit in half. Sit tight if you don't know anything. It's not time yet, Heok said with a victorious smile. Ordinary people don't even know about the existence of a tree with fruit. People who have only played a few times will focus their attention entirely on eating the fruit. But the old-timers enjoy a more perverse and cruel spectacle. The last fruit was plucked and the tree began to rampage. People began to panic again, for everyone here had been through this a long time ago and had already forgotten everything. Even Jong-soo tried to hide, and only Jin Heok alone stood there looking at that tree. Are you going to give up? A question sounded towards Jong-soo. Our meeting. Panicked the guy. This place is all about dying a dog's death. Is that so? Heck asked intrigued. That's a pity. After all, the real reward of the event can only be obtained when all the fruits have been eaten. Jong-soo thought for a moment. Now everything was falling into place. Now he understood why Jin didn't show any interest in the fruit. A plan emerged in his mind. Let's say your words are true. How are you going to proceed? We need to get inside. Jin Heck answered him. If we move next to each other, we'll become an easy target. So it's imperative that we approach it from both sides. He pointed his finger at the tree trunk. All in all, the plan was insanely simple. All they had to do was spread out the tree's attention. However, Jin Heok warned, if even one of the 2 started to hesitate, that would be the end of it. However, Jong-soo assured him that everything would go smoothly since he was also playing this game for a while. Now, Jin Heok shouted and started running along the routes, dodging attacks. However, as soon as he wondered where Jong-soo was, he saw that he was standing still. Jerk. Jong-soo shouted, who's going to listen to you? Here, or become the bait yourself? His plan was even more simple. He was going to wait for the tree to kill Jin Heok and himself, in the meantime, was going to collect the reward. What a relief that your character hasn't changed. Jin Heok fought solemnly as he dodged another tree attack. The one who will be the bait will be you, standing there. As soon as he thought this, the roots that Jin had dodged headed towards Jong-soo, wrapping around him. The roots of the mangrove greed tree began to wrap around Jong-soo with renewed vigor. In just a few moments, the guy was almost invisible behind the roots. Jong-soo started begging Jin Heok for help. Why would I do that? Jin Heok smirked. If you want, you can report me through that wonderful lawyer. Jiangsu tried to say something else, but was trapped in a cocoon of roots and crushed to death. Have a safe trip, trash, or Hayok's last thoughts to Jiangsu. Left by 22 degrees and right by 35 degrees, the roots flew at Jin Hayok with great speed dodge. It's not difficult. In the very next second, the roots collided and pierced through the tree trunk, exposing the heart-shaped fruit that was hiding under the bark. The core of a mangrove tree has appeared. There really isn't an ounce of error from what I went through in the game here. Hayok smiled slyly. After all, knowing the exact trajectory is hard to let yourself be attacked. Jin Hayok picked up the broken-off end of a root from the floor and aimed straight for the tree heart. The only disadvantage of this tree was that since it was an event monster, there was no experience to be gained from it. At most, it could raise the honor level for a day. Mangrove Greed Tree is using the skilled blood-sucking vine. Reported a system notification. Even though Jin Hayok was an old man, even he would have a hard time dodging it. However, Hayok thought, grabbing the root more comfortably and fending off the first attack. It's within my power to tweak the trajectory and change it as much as I like. There's no need to be frightened or worried. Reflecting the attacks one after another, Jin Hayok changed the trajectory of the roots so that they would dig into the ground after all. I've been through this many times before. Almost there, flashed through Jin Hayok's mind as he dodged the roots and approached the trunk. Suddenly, translucent turquoise butterflies began to fly out of the crown of the tree. They release soporific pollen as a defense mechanism. The soporific pollen is inhaled instantly, and if one doesn't know the defense method, one can instantly fall under its influence. However, the method of defense is quite simple and Jin Hayok knew it. The pollen wouldn't be dangerous if one simply held their breath. That's exactly what our hero did, because he reached the trunk without any problems, dodging the attacks directed at him and pierced the core of the tree. The tree began to wither right before his eyes, while a system notification informed Jin Hayok that he was the first to defeat the Mangrove Greed Tree. The guy hadn't expected that the capture pattern and timing study he had repeated so tediously would be of such use to him. However, he was once again grateful for everything he had been doing all this time. Within 24 hours, honor level will be recorded as your achievement. The system notification reported, followed by the next one, give me the player's name. No name. I will remain anonymous. Hayok spoke to himself. He was adamantly opposed to the dissemination of his personal information. The guy realized that he would cause all sorts of interest if it was revealed that he was an old-timer. Apparently, the system doesn't allow complete anonymity. Such was the reaction to the system notification that Hayok's face would henceforth be hidden by a mosaic and his voice redone. That means she compromised and hid my identity after all, though I won't say there's no way to solve it later. The boy reached for the area inside the tree trunk. What matters now is this. It's finally in my hands. In the guy's hand lay a turquoise sphere that emitted a dim light. Tree core tree heart has been obtained. A system notification reported. If each tree fruit raises strength, dexterity, or mana by 3 points, then tree heart gives at least 12 bonus stats. Considering that 3 points are given for gaining 1 level with Jin Hayok's core, it's as if it will rise by 4. Honestly, I can't believe my eyes. There can't be an item with such a good return rate. Hayok examined the sphere while twirling it in his hands. Moreover, even after going through 50 floors, there's nothing better to be found. The guy absorbed the sphere, after which his entire body was pierced by a turquoise light. After the light went out, Hayok decided to check the status in the system window to see how well the loot was absorbed. After the summoning, a system window appeared in front of Hayok, which had the necessary information for the system, such as name, gender, age, and level. But he was more interested in the field that was just below where the stats were described. Specifically, the line stat points available. Level 1 and 12 stat points available. Jin Hayok was the strongest first level in the entire Tower of Trials. Just an hour later, the video walkthrough was posted online and immediately caused an explosion of comments. Barring a couple of comments in the beginning, everyone was sure that this news was absurd and it was all about luck or a simple method was used to kill the mini-boss. However, as soon as the video was uploaded to the network, all doubts instantly disappeared. Some loved it, some didn't. People who saw this video reacted the same way. Also, among all the comments, there were so many who offered exorbitant sums for cooperating with them. Was it that unbelievable? Hayok was perplexed, although, of course, it's not easy to defeat Greed Mangrove Tree while being at level 1. But that's not to call it that amazing either. However, perhaps the reason for this violent reaction was something else. Other people had never reached the second part of the tower, and Hayok was judging from his bell tower, once again forgetting that it wasn't advisable to do so. By the way, 1 billion, Jin Hayok reflected. He had lived a hard life, during which he struggled to earn even his own food. The guy was often late with his rent. There were even times when, after saving money for food for the mukbang, he could sit hungry for days at a time. If he had been offered that money 24 hours ago, he would have accepted the offer without a second thought. But right now, offer him even 1 billion, even all 10, he wasn't going to share the information he possessed. Right now, the most important thing was monopolizing information. While Heck was busy playing the game, the matter flowing out of the Tower of Trials filled all the neighborhoods in Seoul. It didn't really affect anything, but if anything was changed, it was the relics outside the tower, which later became sacred relics. Not for real, of course. Sacred relics with abilities from the legends are in the tower. So now we're talking about replicas, or in other words, duplicates. The place where I can get the most replicas is here. Standing in front of the building and checking against the map on his phone, Gene Heck pondered. This building turned out to be the People's Central Museum. It is a beautiful place that houses many relics. It's like a kind of treasure warehouse. However, the problem was that there was more than one Gene Heck targeting the relics. Unlike the greedy mangrove tree that appeared in 7 different places in Seoul, the People's Central Museum is only one. There will definitely be a lot of people gathering from all the districts wanting to get their hands on the relics, and there will clearly be old people among them. You have entered the event district. The system notified me as soon as I crossed the threshold of the museum. It was too quiet, however. At first, Heck thought that maybe he was one of the first to arrive. But no. The presence of others was hinted at by the burned corpse that lay among the ruins of one of the stands. As expected, Heck thought, looking at the burned corpse that lay among the ruins of one of the stands, someone still managed to come first. The world had changed, so the guy assumed that people would change as well. But the difference between expectation and reality was even greater than imagined. In 24 hours, people had become overly fearless and targeted the sacred relic stored in the halls of the Middle and New Age. The sacred relic that all the people who invaded this place want to get their hands on is the Takeover map. They obviously don't want to look at the 8 provinces of the Republic of Korea. Since the ancient map imbued with mana holds information about the Tower of Trials, everyone wants to possess it. It details where to find the labyrinth with ruins and what items and monsters are there. Who wouldn't want to possess something like that? Even though there is no information above the 10th floor, it is enough to light a fire in people's eyes. Everyone wants it, but they don't know the truly valuable sacred treasures are hidden in the clay. Meanwhile, chaos was going on in one of the museum's halls. Many exhibits were smashed or broken, and people were literally killing each other in an attempt to get to the map first. "Freeze!" loudly shouted a guy with the appearance of a typical Yakuza. Whoever moves from this point onwards is considered dead. However, naturally no one believed him and people started snapping back. "Then if you move a finger either, I'll crack your skull," threatened the guy with the Yakuza hammer. However, angering this guy was a fatal mistake. The Yakuza activated his personal ability, turning his fists into stone. "The map is mine. Stay back," threatened everyone in the hall by the Yakuza guy. "Yours, you say?" came a voice, clearly disagreeing with that statement. An elderly man walked out to the guy. "Ho-ho. I can't agree with those words." The old man's name was Min Young-woo, which literally translated to "let's live in love and friendship." "Who needs to introduce themselves here? Understand the situation and hide," began to shout at the Yakuza, who was clearly angered by John Woo. "Your dried up neck I can wring like a shaking chicken head." The young youth is so crude with words. "Not a tongue, but a blade," John W. reasoned. "But tell me, will you be quicker to wring my neck, or will I turn you into a coal?" The old man smiled sinisterly and snapped his fingers, whereupon a light was lit above his index finger. Catch. Literally one touch of the fiery spark was enough to engulf the entire Yakuza in flames that burned him in a matter of seconds. Now in the place where the Yakuza had just stood was a corpse that looked strikingly similar to the one Gene Heck had seen at the entrance to the museum. "This is a tongue-in-cheek disaster. This is tongue-in-cheek fire," John Woo summarized. "Wow, fire magic is really hot," spoke the girl that just walked up. "It's really good to see that I decided to cooperate with you." The girl's name was Lee Yuri, and she was retreating behind the statues from the Egyptian hall. "He will be enough," the girl spoke, placing one of the statues of Anubis, the Egyptian god of death, on the floor. "He will deal with anyone who decides to interfere with us." The girl activated her personal ability, and a 2-meter-tall humanoid with the head of a jackal appeared in place of the figurine. "The person who moves will be considered his enemy." Question Lee Yuri's rule, understand. "He will devour you, starting with your head." Run. This time she was already addressing the people in front of her. The people around them didn't understand why there were so many old people gathered in the museum, even if they were awakened. Therefore, it was easier for them to surrender than to try to resist the experts and die in a not-so-fair battle. Everyone started throwing their weapons on the floor and declaring that they were surrendering. However, the moment Lee Yuri and John-woo had already relaxed into the hall, Jin Haeok walked in. What a mess they've made. He was indignant as he looked around. Don't these people even have the basic etiquette of handling antiques? Anyway, what a relief that nothing got torn. A satisfied Jin Haeok picked up and dusted off the ancient manuscript. Hey, Appa, who disturbed the atmosphere of fear, addressed Yuri to Heck. Does it look like I'm messing around here? The girl turned to Anubis with a single command, get rid of him. Anubis charged straight at Jin Haeok, intending to kill him with a single blow of his naginata, but the boy easily deflected the attack, knocking the weapon out of the copy of the god's hands. The naginata flew off and made a groove in the floor behind the boy, so strong was Anubis' attack. A ripple of excitement began to run through the hall. No one understood who this guy was, how he got such strength, how he fended off such an attack, and most importantly, how he didn't take any damage. They're the ones who still don't know how many stats Heck has. That's how they reacted like this. What will you do? Your pup? Heck turned to Yuri mockingly. And your only weapon is gone. Who said I only have one statue? Lyra began to panically rummage through her backpack, pulling out 4 more statuettes from there and reviving them. Awakening of the sacred relic Anubis incarnation, replica. The system notification reported. How's that? You could easily tell from Yuri's face that reviving and maintaining the 5 statues was quite hard on her. Still want to laugh. Not bad, Jin Heck summarized. Judging from the fact that Yuri is able to maintain 5 of these things at the same time even with such a small amount of mana, she's no ordinary level. And the grandfather who had recently used magic. Somehow there's a lot of old people who got out of the nub images. Did you say not bad? Yuri interjected, lost. More specifically, somewhere between not bad and so-so. Jin Heck continued to stand his ground. Yuri was confused at first, and then got angry and accused Heck of bluffing. How about this? Then I'd better show you, because it's impossible to sense if the difference in skills is too great. Even just showing her would be enough for her to see everything with her own eyes, the overwhelming difference. Jin Heck took the same manuscript that was dusting off and injected his mana into it, entering mana into the sacred relic Pine Tiger replica. A system notification announced, followed by another appearance of the mountain ruler. A huge golden tiger appeared beside Jin Heck, looking at everyone around him with an evil grin. Absurd, the girl muttered quietly under her breath, not believing her eyes. Era, Jojin, identity, nameless, presented the tiger's system notification. The jackals began to grind their teeth, feeling threatened by the tiger. Some desert jackal dares to show its teeth to the ruler of the mountain. Jin Heck smugly muttered, stroking the tiger behind its ear contentedly. Then the guy pointed his finger at the jackals and spoke out, pathos, eat is served. The tiger was just waiting for this command. He pounced upon the jackals with indescribable anger, mauling them one by one. However, Anubis replicas were not far behind either. They tried to fight off the tiger as best they could, but none of their attacks reached the ruler of the mountain. There's no way. Stunly Yuri, I've certainly heard of different ways of using sacred relics, but I've never heard of anything like this. The girl was racked with fear, and her body wouldn't listen to her mind in this mana. It feels like my skin is being ripped off. I can't win. The girl fell to her knees from helplessness against the mountain ruler and Jin Heck. One could easily read fear, despair, and incomprehension on her face. I was firmly convinced that this was the strongest card. Tears came to the girl's eyes. How could it be? Who is he? While the girl was coming to her senses and asking a lot of questions, Jin Heck began to approach. Give it back, the guy uttered, looking at the girl from top to bottom. However, Lee Yuri didn't understand what he was talking about, so he clarified Tutankhamun's mask. It's useless in Korea. Where are you going to use it? The girl clearly wasn't going to part with that mask so easily. That relic really was useless in Korea. Why would a guy need it? However, Jin Heck did not argue with her. He simply summoned the tiger Odash. I'll give it back. I'll give it back. Lee Yuri screamed panically. Sacred relic mask of Tutankhamun, replica, has been received. The system Uvimation reported. Wonderful, Jin Heck thought. Now I've gotten the second sacred relic. You're targeting the Tetanya Jido map. Lee Yuri asked interestingly. Heck remembered that originally, after all, people had come here mainly just for this map. Hinting to the girl that it was none of her business, he turned to the Lord of the Mountain. Make sure that everything is under control. Make sure no one decides to follow me. Finally, all the preparations were completed and it was time to obtain the strongest skill, Tower of Trials. Lady Lee Yuri, how come? He stood beside a pensive Jin Haeok, who was thinking about the barrier in front of him. Who was he that he could get here? Did he really defeat Lady Lee Yuri and that's why he came up here? It seems to be a level 1 barrier, Heck said thoughtfully. Ho ho, looks like you know about it too. John Woo touched the blue wall in front of them. This is the first time I've seen a barrier like this. Whether it's a physical attack or a magical attack, it's all useless. The old man spoke like a long-time barrier expert. Gene Heck touched the wall, focusing on the flow of mana. He needed to find the place where the flow of magic diverged. It was there that he saw this word, Carpo. I think I know how to destroy it, turned to the old man. But I have a condition. John Woo interjected. If you affect the barrier with your flame magic non-stop, that way we will have a chance to weaken this shield. Gene Heck issued a quite logical theory. How long do we need to do this? John Woo questioned. Until I return with the necessary relics. That is to say, while you're inside I have to stand outside the barrier and affect it with my magic. The old man couldn't understand this guy's train of thought. However, Heck's reasoning was logical. He didn't have the ability to use powerful attack magic that could damage the barrier on his own. He was even willing to give the old man the map, since he himself had come for something else. There was nothing left to do but trust the guy. Understood. I'll trust you and do my best, John Woo assured him, activating magic and directing it at the barrier. The barrier began to resist the attack, but still began to crack. Go, Gene Heck shouted to oneself, while simultaneously uttering the word Carpo, which allowed him to safely run through the barrier. Hurry up, Grandpa shouted, squeezing out all of his mana reserves. Heck nodded back at him and turned away, quickly looking around the floor with a quick glance. The guy noticed that, unlike downstairs, there was nothing to indicate that anyone had been here. Except for one thing, a broken display case that had Ironsword engraved with Shenluin on it. This person already did what he wanted to do and left. Heck pondered. It also became obvious that he was the one who put up the barrier. Whether people are fighting somewhere or not, this man left right after he got what he wanted. He still couldn't bear the slightest burden of danger. However, even those like him did not know what Gene Heck knew, namely, the fact that the item he obtained was nearly a second-rate relic. Found it, Heck said softly and with a smile as he looked at the Dynasty coins. It was the final piece of the mosaic in obtaining a personalized ability just for Heck and coincidentally, to create the strongest skill. Its ingredients were ceremonial Persian pouring mold, E, and the right eye of Tutankhamun's mask, B. By combining these two relics a system notification appeared. Two relics react. That only appeared when two matching relics met. At the same time, if one wanted to advance further, one had to pay the appropriate price. Gene Heck added Lai Dynasty coins to the two provisional relics, and then the system notification said that 3 relics were already reacting with each other, followed by another notification saying, "You have overcome the abysmal probability percentage and succeeded in unification. The Eyes of Truth SS relic has been obtained." The system window showed data about the new relic, allowing the owner to open another person's status window and discern that truth/falsehood in the object's words. But this function was only available 3 times a day. In fact, Eyes of Truth was the best of the 5 existing eyes in the world. However, the real reason why Gene Heck had come to the museum today was not that. Screen Quest. By combining 3 replicas below B class, you have succeeded in creating an item above S class. A system notification appeared in front of the guy, which was soon replaced by another. A strange fate has been achieved. Copy and save numerous abilities that existed in the world, creating more powerful skills from the saved abilities. This was Ji Hyok's personal unique weapon that he was going to use to become the strongest in the Tower of Trials. The special personal ability Unification Overrun has been obtained. Another system notification, which was replaced by the following. The world memories are being formed. A system window appeared in front of Heck with data about the ability. By completing a special quest, the guy could copy the personal abilities and skills of other people, which he then saved in the world memories. By combining the stored skills, he was free to create top-level abilities. However, in the case of a drastic level rise in the preservation conditions, certain details of the conditions could be changed. Hey, John Washout pulled Hyok out of his own thoughts. If you're done, let's hurry up. We're already running out of strength. Turning his attention back to him, Grandpa reminded him that Gene Hyok also had a test subject to test his new ability on. The guy decided to see what it would take to copy John Washout's skill. Copying conditions. Min Young Woo always hides his feelings under a mask. Make him show his true self, the system notification informed him. The thought flashed through Hyok's mind that it would be quite easy to anger the old man. Copy condition. Min Young Woo always hides his feelings under a mask. Make him show his true self, the system notification said. The thought flashed through Hyuk's mind that pissing off the old man would be quite easy. "Hey," John-woo shouted, "hurry up, you don't have to use this skill anymore," Hyuk said coldly. John-woo didn't understand what the guy meant, to be honest. There wasn't much need to use it. What does that mean? Still didn't understand the old man. Then why did you tell me to do that? Carpo, Jean Heck said loudly, after which the barrier fell. In Latin, it was a destruction spell that made it easier to break through the barrier. It was the one the guy used to get through the barrier when he entered the room. The old man didn't actually contribute anything to the barrier's destruction. Did he really believe that his endless attack on a barrier that was impossible to break through would be of any use? Just a waste of mana, Heck pondered. In the end, that old man's mana was almost completely all this was done as a safety net. Because now the guy was going to piss the grandpa off. Heck knew everything about the tower to the smallest detail, and therefore the map with information up to the 10th floor was completely useless to him. Even so, he wasn't going to give it to anyone. Bringing a lead lighter to the edge of the map, Heck was going to burn the map. With this map, anyone could find out all the information up to the 10th floor, so it was feared that Heck's advantage would disappear. In this case, the surest way was to get rid of that possibility. The entire map burst into flames and burned in a matter of minutes. This event inobsoletely angered John-woo, who immediately started cursing at Heck, promising to wipe him into powder. Condition fulfilled. You have succeeded in copying the fire element. The skill, a system notification, informed Jean Heck. The copied skill is stored in world memories. Reported the system notification, fire element. Not a bad stat for the first copy, the guy thought, ignoring the old man's threats, which continued to pile up. However, when the grandfather activated the skill, Jean Heck's patience broke. You don't seem to understand. You don't know why I burned the map, do you? After saying those words, the guy activated a new skill. Although it was only level 1, the difference between Heck and John-woo was astonishing. John-woo realized that Heck was far from a mere mortal since he had such a level. He was so not simple that he didn't even need a map. Old man, if you intend to continue to climb the tower in peace, you must obey me well. Counting Jean Heck, only 4 old men had appeared in the National Central Museum. Now that the challenge tower was a reality, the guy understood the general desire to reduce risks, but the guy didn't understand how one could get ahead of everyone else by doing such a thing. Be that as it may, the guy was determined to gather as many personal abilities and skills as possible. Just like that, Jean Heck had gotten a horse that he would be able to do whatever he wanted with for a long time. His road is still so long, so the first thing he decided to do was to gather the most necessary abilities. Of course, he won't be able to monopolize absolutely all the ironic destinies, but it is in his power to gather the coolest and most important ones. Suddenly, the silence was interrupted by the rumbling of his stomach. There it is, my limit. It's time for rice soup. Walking into the cafe, he heard people's outrages. There was an incident at the National Central Museum in which at least 23 people were killed and more than 50 were found injured. The casualties include the critically injured, so the death toll will continue to rise. The instigators allegedly targeted relics kept in the museum, reported the news broadcast. However, it's not just in South Korea, but also in the US, Europe, China, Japan. Similar incidents are happening all over the world. As expected, players in other countries weren't sitting idly by either, making preparations to conquer the tower. Let's take a look at the CCTV video taken inside the building. Footage of Hayek and Lee Yuri fighting in the museum began to appear on the TV screen. It's hard to believe, but this is, without exaggeration, reality. The government is investigating the reasons behind the appearance of a building of unknown origin called the E-Test Tower. For the employees who can now use special abilities, a special unit, the Awakened Association, was founded. The government reacted faster than Hayek had anticipated. Judging from the fact that they had formed the department from people who had already awakened personal abilities, they had decided to accept what had happened at the museum as something inevitable. It was rather unexpected. Jean Hawk was sure that it would take them at least a few weeks for this to happen. Let's meet the participants and hear the details. The voice from the TV continued. My name is Hanseng Jean. I am the head of the Awakened Association. The reason I am here is to recruit awakened ones. It will depend on your level, but we promise that the pay will be in line with a 7th grade civil servant, and the minimum annual salary will be 60 million won. After a short pause, the man continued, of course, the people who appeared on the broadcast are the exception. Nevertheless, I am willing to put the name of the head of the association on the line and promise, if you join us, whatever you wish for, all your needs will be funded by the government. The people who appeared on the broadcast are the exception. Hesitated Hawk, so in the end their target was me. They considered the guy a serious threat, however he wasn't going to be owned by anyone. no matter what price was offered. One experienced person had far more value than 100 similar players, and since Han Sang-jin also understands this, he tried to lure such a person to his side by beckoning him with a bank check. Han Sang-jin, since he was entrusted with the position of the head of the association, does that mean he has a pretty good ability? The thought flashed through Jin Hawk's mind, or else, is it all because he's been playing Tower of Trials for a long time? Since that's the case, it would be glorious if it was a really good ability. Hiku was already impatient to feel the sweet taste of copying. Shifting his gaze to the clock, the guy realized that it was only a short time before the tower opened. At 7 p.m., when the hour hand indicated the new time, the Tower of Trials officially opened, greeting everyone with a system notification. People couldn't believe that the tower had actually opened and looked just like it did in the game. However, it never ceased to amaze. In honor of entering the tower, 100 coins have been given away. A system notification alerted everyone who entered the tower. Coins are a currency that can be used in the tower. Dear players, by saving your achievements on videos and uploading them, for every 10,000 views you will be awarded 100 coins. The commission varies depending on the level of the player. Viewing videos by those who live outside the tower will only count when they watch the video for the first time. Therefore, please be cautious when choosing a video to watch. The live streaming function can only be used while clearing boss monsters to get to the life's floor. Appropriate action will be taken if tampering of views and other illegal activities are detected. Here it is. The bridge that is the link between the people going up in the tower and the regular people living outside the tower is the live streaming system. Viewers watch player videos, wanting to see the end of the tower and thus raise views. The most interesting setup of Tower of Trials is this system. In other words, the more famous you are, the more coins you can earn. After all the system notifications appeared, people snapped out of their seats, hurrying to grab a favorable spot as quickly as possible and raise the level faster. They must want to get ahead of everyone or get rich quicker. It wouldn't be a problem for Heck to learn coins since he knew everything. However, he wasn't going to pour the video first. Even if he gets some coins for watching, but shares the information he has, he will do himself a huge damage. Especially since the guy had already decided what he wanted to do first. A bit of a different road from the rest of us, G-Hack was immersed in the memories of the very first pass. At that time, after clearing the beginning of the 30th floor of the tower, there was a period where there was no way to advance further. He collected hidden parts, searching the lower floors to climb to the next floors, constantly analyzing every step of the way. Eventually, he was able to find a solution in the ruins alone. Finally, he realized that his character was worthless from the beginning. Is this the result of me searching all the lower floors? The character I pumped up after spending several years in misery turned out to be crap. The guy was bursting with internal resentment and despair. However, he was determined to delete the character and start all over again. That was about 6 years ago. Heck wondered, standing in front of the dungeon doors. Name, Labyrinthos. Type, Labyrinth. Difficulty level, B. The system notification popped up. Description. Labyrinth of Crete, designed by Daedalus, features an incredibly intricate maze and the presence of traps of various types. The foundation for breaking through above the 30th floor will be base accumulation. And the key to the essence of this sweep is in the Labyrinthos maze. Heck never thought that he would have to do this again. It feels like he's going into the army again. Alright, let's go. Gene Heck encouraged himself as he opened the maze. Inside, he was greeted by the familiar sight and smell. Everything was exactly the same as before. Beautiful blowing moths flew under the ceiling, one of which descended and sat on Heck's arm. However, the guy's attention was taken away by the people that entered the maze after him. Who are you? The guy asked menacingly. Hello. Friendly, began a girl in a pink sports sweatshirt that looked to be the head of the team. We were looking for a place to hunt and saw an open maze, so we decided to go in before it closed. 10 minutes before the labyrinth invasion. A group of people had been watching Heck from the moment he entered the tower. They thought he knew something, so they followed him. They didn't understand why the guy went into the maze as soon as he entered. And even more, they didn't understand how Heck opened the maze door without a key. Let's go in too, said the girl in the pink sweater, for which she was immediately bombarded with angry comments from her teammates. If you have a head, try such a thing as thinking. We also know what the most important thing is at the beginning of the Tower of Trials. Right, he hasn't even found the key and the maze has already opened. Besides, since it's at the first level, that means it's possible to go in there and the degree of difficulty isn't that high. From the crowd came the logical statement that the guy obviously wouldn't want to share items, to which the head of the group stated that they would make him stay in that maze forever. "Hello," friendly began the girl in the pink sports sweatshirt that looked to be the head of the team. "We were looking for a place to hunt and saw an open maze, so we decided to go in before it closed. Since you're going in anyway, wouldn't it be better if we all went together? They say the more people who share the burden of danger with you, the better." Heck didn't like the fact that they were trying to outsmart him. Confident in their numerical superiority, activating his eyes of truth, he began to study the status window of the girl who introduced herself as Park Hannah. The guy noticed a very entertaining ability, Contact. It allowed for faster rapprochement with people and eliminated the feeling of awkwardness. Copy condition. Move together with Park Hannah for a minimum of 240 hours. However, during the 240-odd hours, you cannot have anyone else around besides you and Park Hannah. Contact. It will help control that person later. Flashed through Hayok's mind. The rest of the squad members introduced themselves as well. Some hadn't even made it to the end of the first floor. For others it was the first time at all. Heck didn't even memorize their names, because he was sure they could betray him at any moment. Park Hannah approached Heck and put her arm around his waist, asking him what level he was on. Park Hannah is activating the contact skill of level 1, the system notification warned. So that's how it works, thought the guy, coming to his senses from the skill. If I didn't know about the ability, I'm sure I would have sensed we were close, right? Dryly replying that he was up as much as he could. Heck did his best to shove the annoying girl away from him. What's up with that bastard? The contact effect should have shown up by now. Strange, Hannah couldn't find a place for herself. Then maybe you can tell me what kinds of monsters there are in the maze and what their features are. It's not hard for you, right? Hannah turned to Heck. Not difficult, replied Jean. Heck dryly. This maze changes every time at a certain hour. At first, the people around him didn't understand what he meant, but as if to confirm his words, the maze shook and began to change its shape. New blocks began to emerge from the walls of the labyrinth, changing their position with great speed, crushing the players in the process. By the time the reshuffle was over, only 4 people remained alive from Hannah's group. Everyone's been to the beckoning maze at least once, haven't they? Heck asked calmly, dusting off his shirt. It's too dangerous for level 1. We need to get out of here now. Park Hannah stated the fact. Hi Min, can you find a way out? You can find it with your ability, right? Asked Hannah to the girl in her squad. During the maze change, the ability deactivated. Heemin said with tears in her eyes. Then, it turns out we can't find an alternate exit either. We're locked in here. Hannah's face showed fear. Heck wondered why they had entered the labyrinth so confident. And it was only because of their faith in navigation. Afraid that this someone was not a novice, they figured that knowing about the maze would turn their foray into a trip to the neighborhood supermarket. Okay, let's stop with the fact that they're idiots. Now it's almost time for him to show up. Heck was distracted from his musings by Hannah's shouting at him. She began to accuse him of not warning about the maze changes earlier, and that many people had gotten hurt because of him. The rest of the group joined her. Hey, tell me, did I tell you to follow me? Heck asked coldly. You said yourself you came from there, didn't you? I didn't drag you here by force. The white-haired guy was getting even angrier at Heck and even drew his weapon to attack the guy when his head was blown off his shoulders by a single blow from a sharp axe. From around the corner came a huge and clearly not friendly minotaur. Everyone drew their weapons to defend themselves while the axe reappeared in the beast's hand. We're dead, ran through Hannah's mind. Stand back, Heck said and headed out to meet the beast. No one realized what he was doing. The Minotaur was about to strike, but at the last moment Heck ducked. You have successfully dodged, said the system notification, followed by the next one. A hidden stat breach has been received. Great, Heck thought, smiling contentedly. The Minotaur was about to strike, but at the last moment Heck dodged. You have successfully dodged, said the system notification, followed by the next one. A hidden stat breach has been received. Great, Heck thought, smiling contentedly. A gap is a stat that reduces the level difference in a battle with a strong opponent, and increases it even more in a battle with a weak opponent. When fighting an opponent stronger than yourself, the level difference decreases for every 3 points. This is the way to grow while remaining at level 1. And the only way that Heck learned about through countless trial and error. Dodging the Minotaur's numerous attacks, Heck remembered that he had already been hit by thousands, no, tens of thousands of times. His body remembered every attack pattern. Status breach increased by 0.05. The system notifications appeared one after another. No matter how powerful the Minotaur's attacks were, they were of no use if they didn't reach their target. Hannah's squad began to slowly realize that they were going to pick on the wrong person. Even Patch Hannah herself realized how crazy she was, since she was planning to kill a monster like this and take away his rewards. Slowly, very slowly, Heck reasoned as he turned to the Minotaur, swinging it from side to side like that. And you think you can hit it even once? These words only made the monster more angry. The way to become stronger in a short time is simple. You just need to take a risk by placing a bet and putting your life on the line. After all, the reward is given according to the life-threatening danger. That's why Heck risked everything and at the last second dodged the attack that should have blown his head off. At the last second, you managed to dodge a fatal attack. The breach stat is increased by 1. Getting 1 stat point for a scratch is generally not a bad trade-off. Great, thought Heck, but make a slight mistake and the situation becomes many times more dangerous. We need to slowly finish this. The guy looked at Hannah's team. Oh, look at them. Secondary characters willingly decided to remove themselves. Hannah's group moved under the wall, trying to find a way out. Where are you guys going? Heck crept up silently, which startled the entire group, especially when they saw a Minotaur behind his back that was rapidly approaching. If you want to gain stats too, join us. Dodge its attack and you'll be given a hidden stat. It's easier than it looks. Just give it a try. Heck smiled wryly. Gotta share the rewards, don't we? The Minotaur struck the square, but none of Hannah's team fought to dodge. Everyone froze in horror. If Gene Heck hadn't dragged everyone away at the last moment, this was where they would have died. Oh no, what will happen if you continue to stand here like this? At least bend over and keep your distance, came the guy's mocking voice. He was clearly enjoying the helplessness of the players who had decided to finish him off. Am I right, Kev? He never got an answer though. The maze started to change again, saving the players from the monster and giving them some time to rest. See you later. Heck threw to the Minotaur one last time, smiling. The angry Minotaur struck the wall with his axe, but it did not do any good. Meanwhile, the boys were catching their breath, panicking hysterically at their proximity to mortal danger. They had hoped that the Minotaur would no longer pursue them, but Heck saddened them. The pollen of the glowing moths I touched recently is attracting the Minotaur. It's quite possible he will continue to pursue us. When asked why he did something so reckless, the guy explained elementally, "While I have to raise stats, right? Every time the maze changes, I get a little rest to replenish my stamina and have fun, only for the calf to find me again. Isn't that a beauty?" Hannah asked the perfectly logical question. "Then how much longer will you be doing this?" To which she received an equally logical answer, "Until we get out of the labyrinth." Exactly 1 month. At such a statement, Hannah along with the surviving guy decided to move separately from Heck. However, they didn't know where. While Heck, who knew more about this maze than anyone else, naturally knew where the exit was as well. There seemed to be no way out. Hannah had to agree to go with her boyfriend. She was just about to say so when she was interrupted by Gene Heck. "But no, is there anything in this world for free? Even car fare has to be paid for. Coins what you've got, lay it all out," the guy said, putting the knife to the girl's neck. "Opus Pa," shouted the guy while killing goblins in one of the tower caves. This guy's video racked up quite a few views at a time, as everyone was wondering if he was really closing a dungeon without resting for 15 whole hours. The comments section was full of both spam to promote the video and some stereotypical comments. Either way, however, they were promoting the video and making it more popular. Enough, enough. Look, they ate it. The guy couldn't be happy with his friends. All the headlines on the bulletin board are all about me. At least I got some use out of fighting the yearlings to a pulp. The guy continued to peck away. "We'll get 1,000 coins for this video. It's thanks to our combined efforts." "Thanks, guys. I bet everyone thinks you did it solo. We edited it cool too. What would you do without us?" The second guy began. They edited it really well. No one even noticed that the player has a lot of buffs. However, in the comments began to write that it could have been cleaned up in 5 hours. Of course, the company didn't believe it, and began to joke with the words "life in this world initially assumes its monopolization by outstanding discoverers." The guys had no time to rejoice at their success, as they uploaded a new video on the Walk of Fame, which immediately attracted the interest of the whole community. World's first success in strengthening the subject by 10 times. The numbers of comments and views instantly skyrocketed, and the video took the first place in the Walk of Fame, displacing the cave closing video. 10 minutes ago Heck sent the 2 newfound slaves off to gather moss for the recliners and something to make a fire, while he himself summoned the exchange, a handy platform for buying anything the lad needed. He was glad that he had gotten coins without much effort and could buy the things he needed for crafting. To many, they might look like trash that no one would buy: enchanted tarot cards, a shard of an old worn bronze key, a piece of a wooden wagon wheel, a bingo amplifier. But to the guy, They were some of the most important components of his plan. "Thank you sincerely for your purchase," the system notification alerted. The most important thing about buying any item was one principle. The most important thing was knowing how to use it. So, by combining enchanted tarot cards, a shard of an old worn bronze key, and a piece of a wooden wagon wheel, the guy received Wheel of Fortune, Goddess of Fortune, unfinished. This artifact elevates luck to its highest value for 10 minutes, but only had one use, unless one knows the limit of luck with a limited area. To the best of one's ability, the luck gain can be something that will push you from heaven to earth. However, Heck knew its limit, and so he activated the artifact. The highest value of luck has been increased. The system notification reported. The amplification success rate is 0.000012%. Reinforcement loot was famous for having the worst percentage, but right now, Heck's luck was at its maximum level, and he was going to use all of it on the Congel. "You have succeeded in amplification." System notifications appeared one after another with the same text. It was hard to count how many there were, but finally after all those identical notifications, another one appeared. "Received Old Dagger 10, max." Followed by two more. "You are the first person on the Korean server to succeed in creating a 10 item. 5,000 coins received." Followed by another one. "This achievement will be placed on the Walk of Fame for 24 hours, starting tomorrow." It was the 10th 24 hours of life in hell. A fire made of gathered twigs, a bed of moss, and no food except mushrooms and the same moss. The Minotaur that came regularly at certain times was exhausting, and the changes in the constant struggle on the verge of life and death only made it worse. But Jean Heck took it all casually, not showing any signs of it at all. What was harder was Hannah and the guy with her. "If this keeps up, we're going to die." Hannah summarized. "Yeah, that demon will take advantage of us enough and leave us." Her friend agreed with her. In front of Pack Hannah, messages from anonymous people started popping up with all sorts of advice on eliminating boyfriend Ta, and generally words of encouragement. From these messages, it became clear that the girl was doing a forbidden live broadcast for which she could be penalized if this came out. The commentators tried to dig up information about Jean Heck, but they naturally failed. All videos about the tower before its opening in the real world were blocked, and there was no information about a player named Jean Heck anywhere. A couple of people tried to find his channel on Nidoob, but also failed and decided that the guy chose a full solo walkthrough. Anonymous passed information about the situation to the guild Black Raven, which consisted of both guys from the maze and Hannah's old brother, but even there no information could not be found. The only thing the girl learned was that it would take another 3 weeks to get her out of the labyrinth, because no one knew exactly where the labyrinth was. "I've been thinking," Hannah began, "if we kill this freak and hold on a little longer before Appa comes to the cave we discovered, we can survive this hell and get out of it." The girl thought for a moment, but soon continued the thought. "The only question is how to get rid of him." "Isn't Wallace asleep the best chance for that?" asked the boy sitting next to her. "Picking up a heavy stone from the floor will get rid of it at once. Not many people can live with a fractured skull anyway." "Isn't Wallace asleep the best chance for that?" asked the fellow sitting next to him. "Picking up a heavy stone from the floor will get rid of him at once. Not many people can live with a fractured skull anyway." The guy took a swing at Hayok, but was stopped at the last moment by Park Hannah. "Wait. That man has the reaction speed of a real monster. Whether you attack head-on or sneakily, we're powerless against him. There's a good chance that if you attack him now, he'll stand up and attack back. And what do you suggest?" The boy hissed angrily. "It's not like we can keep suffering. And who says we will continue?" The girl started rummaging through her pocket, frantically searching for something. "You know that my older brother is a member of the Black Raven Guild, right? He gave me something in case I find myself in danger." Hannah showed a sting that reeked of black energy, a deadly poison, 1 drop of which is enough to kill 100 trolls. The poisonous sting of a giant immature pumpkin wasp. If it's to be acted upon, it must be acted upon in a way he can't resist. Fried moss and mushrooms again. Heck stretched out anguishedly. A wooden board served as a plate, and the chopsticks were made of mouse bones. It felt like the characters were making a survival movie. Park Hannah hinted rather bluntly that if a guy wanted something different, like a mouse or a moth, he would have to get that different first. It wasn't a lie in general, but the guy still called Hannah rude in his mind. "Miss Park Hannah, would you pass the water behind you?" "Mr. Soul Sick, pass some mushroom with moss." Jean Hayok asked the others. They gladly complied with the guy's request, additionally telling him to eat the mushrooms since there's still plenty of this nasty stuff. "Have a nice one." The guy finally nodded, taking his food. As soon as he put a bite of food in his mouth, the commentators exploded in an uproar. Some joked about the warmth in his mouth, others wryly asked if the food was good. The plate fell out of the guy's hands, and his mouth bled. However, for some reason, it wasn't everyone's expected Heck who got poisoned, but Hannah's friend Seal sick. Literally in a second, his body darkened and started emitting an ominous aura around him. Assholes, Heck summarized. You thought I'd mindlessly accept food from your hands like that? You knew about the poison? Hannah asked worriedly. She was afraid that Hyun wouldn't do anything to her, for she realized that she was powerless against him. Yes. When I asked for a refill, I quickly changed plates when you were distracted for a moment. The guy opened the report window and turned to the anonyms that were chatting with Hannah. It's definitely illegal to secretly conduct a live broadcast. What are you talking about? Both Hannah and the commentators started to panic. Do you have any proof? Let's see. Live streaming can only be enabled when facing a boss to go to the next floor. The guy started reading out the rules. In the event that you tampering or other illegal activities are detected, appropriate action will be taken. If no illegal activities are detected, the applicant will be fined. Apply. A system notification popped up. You should watch your facial expression while on air, don't you think? There's a bit too much visible disappointment on it. Park Han. The guy pressed the yes button in the system notification and a barrier labeled warning immediately appeared around the girl. Application has been submitted. Anonyms have been removed. The system notification reported. Hannah just watched as her viewers were blocked one by one, without being able to do anything. These viewers will not be able to watch the video for 1 month. If violated again, these viewers will be permanently deleted. The system notifications reported while Hannah still didn't fully understand what was happening. A new notification appeared. This player's fine has been replaced by a merciless fate. Immediately after this message, the wall was breached by a minotaur that had just discovered its victims. With a loud roar and a lust for killing in its eyes, it began to flee rapidly. Are you going to fight this time too? Began Hannah to Jin Haeok. Just tell me where I can hide. Hurry up. He's getting closer. Miss Park Hannah, how cheeky you are, uttered Jin Haeok. Even more recently you tried to send me away, so why should I even tell you anything? Heck asked the logical question. Why, you ask? The girl hesitated. But you've been doing it so far. The conditions of copying have been fulfilled. You have succeeded in copying the skill contact. See. A system notification appeared, after which Heck smiled ominously. Oh, that. Now you're not needed. Heck issued threateningly. Wait a minute. You're going to regret it, aren't you? My older brother in the Crow Guild. But the Minotaur, who had clearly not been taught that interrupting is not a nice thing to do, especially not with an axe. Hannah barely dodged it, while Heck looked as if he had been waiting for it. He wanted Hannah to look at him carefully, because he was going to show how big the difference between him and some stupid guild was. The boy struck the Minotaur with a crisp kick to the neck. Tisk, not deep, the boy remarked. But the damage, as well as the benefit of pumping breach, was there, which was already good news and couldn't help but be happy. In any case, killing the Minotaur will not be possible yet, so it will be enough to create a similar situation. After another series of dodging the monster's attacks, the guy activated the fire skill. Activated fire element 1 Latvian Lat informed the system notification. However, it was as if the fire was wiping out the monster without touching it. So, the guy cut the tendons in the monster's knees and the monster, unable to stand on flat paws, fell off with bent legs. Don't rage too much, said Heck, intercepting the dagger into a more comfortable grip. As you build muscle, the meat gets tougher. It was almost time for the Minotaur to use his last card. A terrifying monster howl echoed throughout the maze and a system notification appeared. Maze Guardian Minotaur activates Rabies 10 Latvian Lats. With quick and precise blows, our hero struck the Minotaur from behind, hitting its tendons and thus immobilizing it. The hero prepared himself, knowing what awaited him next, as he had passed this test before. The Minotaur used his last trump card and activated a 10 Latvian Lats Rabies. His muscles grew larger, much like himself. He was aggressive and very angry. His axe began to glow green in color. Our hero stood confidently. The girl did not understand how such a creature could even be defeated. The rabies that activated the Minotaur meant that for 5 minutes, Vic's strength, speed, and movement speed were increased by 30%. An additional time option was activated. Intelligence was increased. He could speak fluently in the human language. The human said to the Minotaur, I will tear you to shreds, stomp you into dust, and sew you into Dagjit so that you can no longer encroach on this place. Our hero felt the mana effect improve slightly from what it was. Now he was ready. Attack! He shrieked. The Minotaur was possessed by the power he had. They clashed, blow after blow being thrown by the Minotaur. The Minotaur was possessed by the power he had. They clashed, blow after blow being thrown by the Minotaur. Our hero easily blocked them. The girl who was standing behind them watched them and couldn't believe her eyes. With such strength, even if an entire crow guild fought against the Minotaur, they wouldn't win. And that crazy guy, how could he smile in such a situation? Thinking back, it seemed like he was stuck, but he hated with every fiber of his being that made it seem like no matter how hard he ran forward, he was still treading water. In this unchanging reality, he felt helpless, whether in reality or in a game. The complexity was like hell. However, this world was now reacting to him more strongly than before. Our hero was good at fighting the Minotaur. They had been fighting for a long time. He didn't attack much, only dodged. The Minotaur was furious. "You're so strong, human, you can't even leave me a scratch." With quick movements, our hero jumped in different directions, and the Minotaur could not keep track of him. And now almost the Minotaur's strike reached its goal. But suddenly there was a notification that 5 minutes of the Minotaur's rabies was over. Frenzy was a way to show all your strength in 5 minutes, even more. It was the Minotaur's Raven card, but a penalty would follow where he would go into anabiosis for 24 hours. The hero knew this with a smile, as he had passed through this maze before and had died here more than once. Standing near the mammoth, he counted his pack points gap. If you look at it that way, the difference of 19 levels is quite manageable. With 20 days left, our hero's goal was to reach 100 points. The frightened girl stood and asked our hero, "Finished already?" To which she heard in response that the rabies was over, but he only got rid of the Minotaur for a while. When the maze changes, it will be 24 hours before he reappears. I thought he said he was going to be here for a month. Only 20 days left. It's over. After 20 days of battling the Minotaur, attack after attack collected stats of 10 and 15. And eventually his values reached 100 points. "The longer you fight, the weaker you become," said the hero, and knocked out the Minotaur with one powerful blow. But as he stepped on its head, he said, "It's time to infuse, calf. All that remains is to figure out what to do with you." From that moment on, our hero was gathering the interns into the company of old men. But the girl's soul had no desire in her eyes, which made our hero a little embarrassed. Therefore, he got a little angry. However, the girl immediately began to correct herself and said that she was very interested in it, and she had wanted to join something like this for a long time. The hero asked what she could be useful to the company in the future. "I have my personal contact skill," she quipped. "I'll be useful in running the company." But our hero already had that skill. "And that's it," he replied. She didn't give up hope, however, and suggested that she would never betray him. It was a total disappointment. She had already despaired, begging on her knees for him to keep her alive. It was then that she remembered the Brahma ring. Her elder brother had made a contract with China, and his payment they would give him the ring. It was an interesting offer. The Brahma ring had fallen into the hands of the Black Crow Guild. It was the best item one could obtain on the first floor. It increased movement speed, provided resistance to magic, and also allowed one to restrain the mana of monsters. Be that as it may, she wasn't lying. The only thing left to do was to sign the contract. The girl, after hearing this, was able to squeeze out the words, "Do we still need to sign the contract?" The hero began to read the memories of the world and, using the skills of fire and contact, create the contract. "It's going to be a little hot," he said. The girl watched in horror as he pointed directly at her with his fiery hand. She thought the seal would be on paper, but no such thing. The hero thought otherwise. "Congratulations on joining the Black Enterprise in turn." A level 1 soul brand was carved on the girl's face. Soul branding level acquired. It carves a brand on an object. The object branded must obey the skill owner's orders completely. Any actions that harm the owner are forbidden. In case of violation, the entire body is ignited and a horrific pain appears. The doors opened and our hero and the girl climbed out to the surface. "We're alive. We're alive," exclaimed the girl with relief. The maze of the first floor was passed for the first time, so the guys would be on the coins as a nice bonus. "This will be a reward for the torment," the girl thought after seeing the coins, but the hero immediately cut her off by saying, "Trainee, get the dough here." At this point, no one had such a sum on their balance as our hero. At the last moment he told the girl to bring the ring in 3 days, to which she replied, "3 days? I can't make it that fast." But the hero didn't care. He just clenched his fist and activated the seal, and the mark of his hand began to ignite on her face. In a week's time, Korea's strongest guild, Tanjin Guild, plans to defeat the 3rd floor boss. The Tanjin Guild is the strongest guild in Korea. Also fighting in the tower are the United States, Europe, and Japan. But the stakes are very high for Korea. So far, there is still no announcement from the Chinese about help from another country. Wouldn't it be better to try to capture the tower on our own? I believe that the Tanjin Guild can do it without outside support. It was an interview on a large monitor in the center of the city. Our hero was walking with a girl and watched it, but he thought they were in such a hurry to act. Although not understanding what was there and how, he understood why they were in a hurry. They want to get as many good resources as possible. Each floor is given 90 days. In other words, there's no need to go to the third or even the second floor without reinforcing the rear. They wouldn't be able to handle the level of difficulty that would await them ahead, and there would be no second chance for humanity. The hero was already home, and he needed to gather information from the last month to find reliable information amongst the gossip and lies. He needed to go to people he knew and could trust. Through his phone he logged into the community of the Challenge Tower, and in a search he found the guys he needed. The first was a guy with the nickname Bald Head and a girl Wounded Fist. Kim, the guys are nothing like even their characters, and I played with them 2 years in a row. He never imagined that his first band would be set up like this. The hero applied the Eye of Truth and saw that the guy has no major flaws, and the magic is powerful, and the ability is useful in large-scale battles. The girl, on the other hand, has the ability to fight in close combat. They turn out to have the same level. It looks like they fought together, although they got along quite well before. The conditions to copy their techniques weren't so easy due to the fact that they were long-time comrades. They needed to reach the 20th floor of the Challenge Tower together, and then the conditions would be met. Now it was our hero's turn to tell about himself. My nickname is Captain Xanut. Lowering his head, he said he was a little embarrassed. So why did I create such a nickname 11 years ago when I was 27 years old and I was live streaming on Paprika TV? So, are you a streamer? The guy asked. Not anymore, the hero replied. He was tight-lipped, but the guy said, relax, after all, we've played together so many times, and yes, we'll be more comfortable. How sociable they are. He remembered that there were those who wanted to betray and use him. He was so tired of being among hypocrites. Next to these guys he felt comfortable for the first time in the last month. This was how our hero found out what was happening while he was in the maze, the development of the main guilds of the world, the tendencies of streamers, and the Minecraft collective that was creating a factory and kidnapping people. Han, you've been missing for the last month or so you didn't take the test, right? The guy he was sitting with asked. But Han didn't understand what test he was talking about. Our company was riding in the car, and on the way a conversation arose about when the tower first appeared. A flood of players rushed inside. But from the second floor the number of deaths increased, so it was decided that those who passed the test would be able to climb to the second floor and higher. But there is not everything so simple, and the system cannot be deceived. So the confirmation code the head of the Association of the Awakened used to reduce the victims and collected people with powerful abilities. But in such a situation, the hero planned to use the created scheme of the association for his own benefit. After the association scheme was created, players who received a grade lower than F could not pass to the second floor. However, players who received a high grade were immediately invited to join the strongest guilds in the country. Therefore, there were 3 types of people gathered at the testing site. Those who frantically wanted the right to enter the tower, those who met those who had attained high ranks for the tower, and those who wanted to show off their power to enter to the entire world. Park Han from the Dark Crow Guild and Park Han Jin, the rising star of that guild. But the one walking behind was Kim from the Fighting Fathers Guild. But those who were there wanted to get rich and famous as soon as possible. I don't have time for that. I'll clear a path for myself now. The reporters are waiting for me, and I can't waste much time here. I came here because of you, so try your best before I get angry, he stated. Don't worry, we can handle it. They quickly began to disperse everyone. Give way, come on, hurry up, what are you standing up for? Shouted and shoved everyone. Who are you? Can't you hear me? Shouted one of the big man's subordinates in the direction of our hero. Move over for me, will you? I got my number and I'm waiting in line. Why should I move over? Stated our hero. And then a magical rising star appeared with shouts. Why can't you get rid of some asshole? With a swoop at our hero, I don't know who you are, but you're making a mistake. If you don't move, you're gonna get hurt. The situation was heating up, everyone was whispering around. It was Brother Park Han, the hero, who had activated the Eye of Truth. Seeing his abilities, he was offered copying conditions. By raising the copy target's interest to the maximum, one could copy an ability, and by raising the hostility to the maximum, one could copy one skill. After reading this, our hero became inflamed. What? Just need to be provoked. The girl who was in the maze with our hero earlier saw her brother pointing his finger at our hero, but she didn't realize who it was yet. The brother turned away and said that there was one who had mistaken the shores. At that moment, our hero breaks the bully brother's finger. The guy grabbed his finger, with the words, "What a freak," started to pull out his weapon and go to fight. But our hero was faster, throwing water at his opponent. With the speed of sound he kicked him in the leg and he fell down. No one noticed what had happened, they thought he had just stumbled. Ira couldn't believe her eyes when she recognized our hero and wondered why exactly he was here. What was he doing here? From behind, someone shouted contentedly. The big guy. Our hero baited the eye of truth, but there was a failure. The scan was rejected due to the difference in levels. The big guy's level was over 20. I didn't know he had a babysitter. Our hero told the big guy he needs an eye on him. But that's okay, he's a useful little guy, the big guy replied. Useful? You say that's what he's shipping to China. Isn't that Bark Dynasty ginseng? How about asking the right question, like how to get rid of side effects? The hero said. Enough, shouted the big guy and activated a level 3 dungeon skill. A cube began to appear in the building with only our hero and the big guy in it. He asked our hero, and he just stood there and watched as a protective wall formed around him. Necessary to restore mana. Eating the ginseng item of the core dynasty. But if you just eat it, there would be a side effect of magic poisoning. You must be agonizing over it right now, right? But our hero knew how to solve the problem. There were 3 items needed for this: the juice of Karasin, the moonstone, and most importantly, the mandrake root. I think you're on the lookout for mandrake root. I'll tell you where it is. Everything the hero said matched the scouts. Cold cream, this guy wondered. Big guy. Okay, I'll believe you, but there's one but. I'm warning you, no tricks or you're gonna get hurt. I will wipe you out. Our hero asked for 10 of the most valuable dungeons. It was an excessive, high price. The big guy didn't like it and decided to end it. But he didn't seem to realize that this deal and his life were now in our hero's hands. Outside, the hero's team was massacring the big guy's team left and right. If they keep this up, it's not going to end well for them. The dungeon skill was cancelled, and here our hero was already walking towards his team. Are you okay? Shouted the guys. You were simply kidnapped. I'll kill them all, you just say the word. Don't worry, we're fine, we've found common ground. At this time, a guy with a broken finger walked up to the big guy and started yelling. Are we just going to let him go like that? Let me get ready and I'll bury him. The big guy took him by the throat with one hand and lifted him up, saying, you're not his equal, so don't move, and if you ever do anything like that again, I'll kill you. What had happened in the Nutri dungeon? The guy wondered. He was so angry that his eyes were turning red. After saying I'll kill him, the copying condition was fulfilled. Our hero had copied the stealth skill. This meant that he gained a passive skill. He could control his breathing and heart rate. The control depends on the level of the skill. Now it was time to pass the felf. Looks like my trainee has seen mountain ginseng or something. Here we go, next. Come on in, our hero is here. The test is very simple. You have to hit the magic stone as hard as you can. All items and skills can be used. The hidden power of the stone is revealed during the attack. After the explanation, the hero will only use a dagger. That should be enough. The guy with glasses who was following the procedure said, whenever you're ready, you can begin. But our hero wasn't so simple and went straight to the supreme stone. But the guy wanted the hero to hit the middle stone. That was the starting stone. Simple players can't even activate the middle level stone, he said. But that didn't stop the hero. He instantly activated the power surge stat. Well, let's see what all the effort in the maze was worth. With lightning fast power, he chopped the stone in half. It's not possible, shouted the guy with glasses. Most of the players don't qualify because they don't have enough magic power to attack a small stone and break a medium stone in half. He didn't even know it was possible. Congratulations, you got rank C, the guy yelled at the departing hero. Wait, I have to report this to my superiors. Report back in a week, please, asked our hero. What? Answered the guy, you want to ask for a postponement. For personal reasons, in a week you can report anywhere, said the hero. I know a few worldly wisdoms. One of them is the law is far away, but the fist is near you. All understood, said the hero with his blade in his hands. After these words to the guy definitely understood. After that our hero stood in the corridor and then came up. The trainee with whom he was in the maze. She held out her hand in which was a ring. Here is what you asked for, she said. Rama ring, difficulty of obtaining a resistance to magic plus 10, speed of movement plus 25, ability suppression plus 20. It could suppress the abilities of monsters. It came out even faster than I thought, said the hero. In response, the girl with a hot face screamed, I kept my promise to remove this stigma from me. But our hero only anointed his hand and said that he would look at your behavior and decide what your rank F cannot be. I thought you would have more than us. With surprise, said the friends of the hero, to which she replied that this is a temporary result and a week you need to retest. But he needed information on this, he said. Not to worry and that they should go to the tower and he will write to them a little later. The first test determines the rank based on magical power, and whoever passed the first passes to the second. The task is very simple to pass one of the dungeons of the tower restrictions. In complexity there is no need to only choose the difficulty and opponents. Then it will goblins or orcs all the same. But the place where our hero will go is the ruins on the first floor. Neither for those 11 years that they played in the tower, nor now when it appeared yet no one has not managed to pass that forbidden zone. The last time the hero was there was at the abode of the fallen. With an F rank, he couldn't go there alone because the guild guarding the ruins wouldn't let him through. The best option was to go there as a porter. Earlier, the guy he was walking with asked how he got here. He had to explain that he needed money to survive. Everybody needs it, the guy replied. I'm here to feed my wife and kids. The hero immediately realized he was one of those suicide players. With our rank, we must be extremely careful. Where they point us, that's where we go. There's no machinery inside and the ambulance won't come. Don't worry, our hero started to calm the guy he was walking with from the beginning. The ones in here will at least get home unharmed. Thank you, he replied kindly, and you're braver than the others. Finally the quest for the raid team begins. It was difficulty C, which had the conditions to kill the location boss and free the prince who was deep in the ruins. The reward was a choice, however, if the boss was not killed, the choices were limited. After traveling a long way, they have finally reached and will be able to rest until the raid team arrives. The hero stood as if nothing had happened, but then there was a special reward for the first conqueror of the tower. It was only visible to our hero. Next he was given a reward. It was luck and adaptability, which increased by 10. Also received a cold heart, the ability to remain calm even in a critical situation. But there may be problems with the appearance of emotions. A passive monopolization skill was also obtained. If the hero completes the quest alone, the reward for completing the quest will be the highest possible. The smile was up to my ears. How awesome was this? Although there are many incredible rewards in the tower, getting even one was a huge amount of luck. With a pass like this, I basically don't need luck either, the hero thought. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, and hunters started to appear, led by the leader, who immediately after appearing started saying, "Oh my head, I can't get used to this." There were 50 of them, quite a large number for such a raid. Our hero immediately used his eye of truth to see who the leader was. His name was Song Chong, and he was 29 years old. At this moment, his level was 14. The copying condition for our hero was to gain his trust during the raid, but it would be difficult for him. Wait, I can't believe the head of a top 10 guild only has that level. The main thing is to make sure that no one reveals our hero. If someone finds out about his power, everything will definitely fall apart. It got darker at first, and some magician in a hat started saying to follow him. If someone got lost, no one would look for anyone. He activated his level 1 lamp. The entire compound lit up with a red light. But what was it? There are arrows in the head and torso. Once inside the cave, the group was horrified to see the swarm of the group underfoot, who had killed many monsters, spreading out quickly and without any trouble or casualties. There was a frightening atmosphere in the cave that made goosebumps run down the body. Some guy waved his hand to the porters. "Here they are, they've arrived," he said. Our hero looked at the swarming group that had been fighting before they arrived. It was somehow strange that they had killed so many monsters without any casualties. The leader's strategy was somehow strange. "What's frozen?" someone shouted and punched our hero on the shoulder. "What's frozen?" "Go hand out water," said the guy. "All right, I'm a porter," our hero immediately realized and turned his attention to the guy in gold armor. It was a foreigner. What is that sign on his shoulder? He wondered. That's right, it's Shaun Guild warriors, some fragile creatures. Maybe I'll be able to make friends with someone. With confident movements, our hero presents a cup of ice and says, "You've done a good job. Drink up, chill out." At this point, he activated his level 1 communication ability. In response, it was received that our hero was shown interest. The man started to remove his helmet, but who was there? It turned out to be a very beautiful girl. Our hero did not understand at once, but then it came to him that it was the youngest daughter of a family of aristocrats. Teresa of Europe, a versatile player connected with divine power, with skills of attack, defense, and healing. The hero who saved Amsterdam from chaos, one of Europe's famous players. Now it was clear to our hero why they had suffered no losses, since she is best at dealing with all sorts of undead and other evil things. The hero could not understand why she was here, because now everyone wants to climb as high as possible in the Tower of Trials, and if I'm not mistaken, Now there is a raid on the boss of the 3rd floor. Teresa was very happy after quenching her thirst. The hero wasted no time and applies the eye of truth to see what this girl is all about. But suddenly there was an error. The application of the skill was impossible because of the difference in level. It turned out that Teresa had level 20, but because the hero had recently gained the stats of luck and adaptation, he could compensate for the level difference. The Eye of Truth was now level 2, and he could look at players who were level 20 or higher. Now he could evaluate Teresa. Well, let's see, she would have excellent skills. After what he saw, the copying conditions were as follows. Teresa was among the top 100 players in the world. If our hero could rescue her from a dangerous situation, he would be able to copy one of the skills. Looking at the statistics, the hero understood why everyone admired her. That's it. That's what the career choice test is. That's why she came here. Teresa gave thanks for the water. It had sufficiently quenched her thirst. I should thank you, whispered our hero, for an ability that is highly prized by warriors. He would have the opportunity to receive the patronage of the heavens. The only thing would be to find out what situation could be dangerous for this paladin, and how he could save her. This was quite a heavy condition. Jongwon, urgently come over here, some person shouted out. The head of the raid came running over and saw that all the sentries had been killed. But who could have done this? Some kind of object is flying in the air. A notification appeared that the ruin guards were watching for trespassers. The time remaining is 10 minutes. It was a security system, a dormant bung. It only activated when trespassers appeared, and when activated, it could summon guards. If it's left untouched, nothing happens, but some idiot activated it that way. It doesn't matter now, it's in battle mode, there's only 10 minutes left. So little time. The guild leader knew that fighting the guards was suicide. At least half of the raid could die in this battle. He could have evacuated the civilians in 10 minutes, but he didn't want to. In his panic, he didn't want it to end like this before it had even started. After all, they had just gotten here and couldn't leave with their hands clenched. He had worked so hard to become the head of the guild to leave it like this. We are continuing the raid as ordered by the guild head. But the guy behind us replied they haven't even gotten halfway there. There are guards there who will attack from all sides. Sweat was running down the face of the guild leader. He was both angry and agitated, but he didn't want to go back. He shut the mouths of those who arose and ordered them to follow him. If anything, he would take full responsibility. Even without a second team, they had a chance of success. After all, they had Street Teresa with them, a girl who was in the top 100. She is strong and brave. She will help us. At this time, a group of people who were vacationing heard someone running toward them and saw a guy yelling, "What are you sitting there for? Didn't you hear that the guards woke up?" The guys calmly continued to sit there. They had faith in the guild they came from and began to calm themselves down, thinking that with such a strong guild, there was nothing to worry and fear. After all, they had probably already dealt with all the guards. But suddenly, a large hand appeared from behind the guy who had come running. With one sweep of the hand, the guy flew off. It was the guards. They were big, and flames were erupting from their equipment. The guys were surrounded by them and realized they were all in trouble. The guards began to advance, and the main forces of the raid team began to prepare for battle. The tanks were put forward, and the porters were sent back, thus forming a platoon. The tanks were handed out buffs and the hitters were ordered to get ready. The guild leader didn't waste much time and immediately activated level 3 steel defense and level 2 combat concentration. After that, the mage who was behind activated the level 2 Song of Angels. The guards were approaching, and the battle began. The first blow came at the leader. At this time, the solo players were surrounded and had nowhere to go. They asked for reinforcements in the large group that was fighting ahead. The leader started telling them that the solo players were in a dangerous situation. But the guild leader didn't care. He didn't even want to listen as he thought that there would be casualties anyway, and there was no time to think about the solo players. Unlike players who act cohesively, solo players in such situations are immediately lost. The guild leader heard everything, but still left them behind. It would seem that the solo players are finished, but suddenly Teresa appears and activates a level 4 cross skill, and kills the guards in one move. "Teresa, thank you," said the solo player who was barely standing on his feet from fear. Teresa stood and assessed the situation. 2 guards had passed through the rear of the raid group. That meant that the non-combat units were in danger. She was right. The porters had been defeated. The last one left was sitting under a rock and saw the guards coming towards him. It was the end, he thought, but our hero appeared with the words, "What are you carrying, old man? I told you you'd come home alive." A porter shouted from behind, seeing the guard approaching. At this moment, our hero activated the fire skill. Hitting with a fire attack, the guardian shattered into pieces, but our hero didn't kill him, as he needed to stay at the first level. "How did you get such power?" asked the man who was saved by our hero. In response, he heard only that he was just lucky. The hero wondered who could have awakened the guard, but it didn't matter anymore. At speed, Teresa flew by and took the man away from our hero. She thought our hero was bad after noticing him threatening the porter with a knife. "And perhaps it was you who woke the guards?" she asked. "You're under arrest," she said. Our hero stood there in shock thinking, "Who am I?" She started to attack. She didn't mean to hurt him, but our hero fought back well. Teresa got more than a little pissed off and didn't listen to what our hero was saying at all. "Well then, we'll have to do this." The hero in one motion shifted and shoved Teresa so that she crashed into the wall, and there he was with his blade near her face. "I didn't wake the guards, and if I had to, I would have killed them with my own hands." That's when the peddler started yelling, "Miss Teresa, why are you doing this? He saved me." Teresa realized with a goofy look on her face that she had made a mistake and started apologizing. But the hero said it was okay. He realized his actions looked suspicious. "Your name is Jean Heck. What reason are you hiding your identity?" Teresa asked. "For the same reason as you," replied the hero. "To apply. You invited the Shan Guild. You want to secretly obtain the Treaty of St. Peter for a profession quest. I, too, need some item that no one must know about." Our hero knew all the strategies for traversing these ruins. He offered a condition to Teresa. With her skills, she must help him, and the items he needed were in one place. "So, how's the concordance?" the hero asked Teresa. Later, there was a conversation between Teresa and the head of the guild. Teresa suggested that they could continue on their own while she excused herself for a bit. But the head started complaining that it would be hard for them without her. However, Teresa said that according to our map, they still have 20 kilometers to go, and the strategy is known to everyone. Not having her won't change anything. Besides, according to the agreement, before the boss battle, all the squad leaders have the same rights, don't they? She asked. Here, the leader had no answer. He agreed on only one condition, that she would return before they reached the room with the boss. Teresa promised to join them before the battle started. She also asked to take one of the porters. "Do as you wish," the head replied. At this time, the porters stood aghast and whispered, "It's a one-way whitewash. Boys, the main thing is, don't look her in the eye, or she'll pick you out for sure." Someone raised his hand with a shout. I'll go with you," replied our hero. The boys began to dissuade the hero that they knew for sure if he went, he would die. No matter how beautiful Teresa is, don't go with youth. No matter what our hero says, they definitely won't understand. But if that's the case, then, when you were young, did you ever have that moment when you were on fire with an idea? Right now, it's the love in me that's giving out, he shrieked. Even if I lose my life because of my weakness, everyone was shocked to hear. And so began the journey of our hero and the young beauty Teresa. They went forward, but as it turned out, they didn't have far to go, and it was all because the hero knew everything about this dungeon. They stood on the balcony and saw a lot of unclean things walking around the sarcophagus. Teresa asked, "Is this the place?" And the contract of St. Peter was in that sarcophagus. But they realized that they still had to remove the protection. Suddenly they got a notification that the master of the abode of the fallen was watching them. Our hero wondered. They were talking about the boss, but he had never been interested in the players. And now he decided to show himself. Teresa and the hero realized that they both see it. It's definitely from the boss. But what do the words mean? Teresa asked the hero. Does he see us as enemies? She asked. The hero immediately replied that, as expected, he recognized it and is watching. Jean Heck asked me, "A question for you. You said you know the way to pass." "Yes, I have known for a long time," replied the hero. "Then I must do it," Teresa replied and jumped straight to the monsters below. There were a lot of them. They spotted her right away. But Teresa activated the level 5 battle song skill. It helped triple her stats for 10 minutes. The hero asked her beforehand to attract the undead's attention, and the battle began. All the monsters noticed her terrifying power and rushed at her. Teresa released all the energy and thus attracted almost all the monsters that were nearby. Teresa activated the power of a level 5 saint, emitting such a bright light that all the monsters started to disappear in the vicinity. And so she swung her sword, chopping the undead in all directions until all the undead were gone and our hero began to take action. Thanks to her control over the mobs, our hero won't have to engage in battle and thus won't raise his level. A bright red lightning bolt flew towards the hero. The elite undead appeared, and thus the special dead rose. It was finally a mini-boss for our hero, and that was good news. Striking from the front was a guardian, but from where it came from the hero wondered. Most likely it was because he came with Teresa and the conditions had changed. The hero would need to take that into consideration next time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments below. The daughter is using dark magic and thus hurting her own guards. The hero could deal with the guards easily, but here was a flying monster mage. You had to be careful. The dark mage started to attack the hero, but he didn't even realize that the hero was deliberately luring his attacks in his direction so that he would miss. The attack went directly into the sarcophagus. Magic level 5 was destroyed. The mage screwed up. The hero moved forward slightly, thus scattering the guards. He stopped. So, he said, Teresa will be done soon too. Only you, the skeleton, are left. But what is it? Someone chopped a skeleton in half. I finally found you, some guy said as he stepped his foot on the skeleton's head, thus destroying it. Someone who reads all the monster's movements like an open book. I was sure you'd come. Long time no see, the guy said, pointing his sword at the hero. But the hero didn't even realize who was standing in front of him. You don't recognize me. The hero applied the Eye of Truth to find out who was in front of him, and the player's status was revealed in front of him. Young Yusong believes that he is the best swordsman. Defeat him in a sword battle by breaking his self-confidence. The hero also noticed that the guy is holding an iron sword from the Qianlong dynasty. If he took it, back when the Tower Challenge became a virtual game, that guy lost to me once. His bootstrap got short-circuited, and time after time he wanted to fight me. Wherever I was, he challenged me again and again. This battle-hungry warrior, you're the damn stalker who was chasing me. The guy understood why he didn't recognize me. The game had become real, and the character had changed. That's why he reacted the way he did when he saw me. He's underestimating me, the guy decided. The character remembered him back at the museum. Leave me alone. The hero said, you're a pain in the ass, constantly challenging me to fights just to play. This time will be different, said the guy standing in front of the flushed hero. We're at the beginning now, so you won't have an advantage, the hero decided. Since he wants to fight so badly, there's no point in discouraging him. But can you handle it? The hero asked. My partner won't just stand by and watch. She'll smash him like snot on a tree, he added. That's streak, Teresa. That's an interesting partner you have, said the guy. She won't be able to stop us. Jiang Xian applied a level 5 field selection. Taking his sword, he slammed it into the ground. At this time, our hero was standing near the sarcophagus, and he found what he came for. From a slit in the sarcophagus, he pulled out a small ball. The space from the technique started to change, and Teresa, who was looking at it, heard only 2 words from our hero. We will meet again. A moment and they disappeared. All that was left of them was a bright light that flew upwards. Teresa didn't realize what was happening and stood there confused, and lo and behold, they appeared in a different place. The guy who challenged our hero to a duel pronounced that no one else would stop them. I am the world's greatest swordsman. I challenge you to a fight. He activated the kiting technique. It was a level 5 duel. Because of her, all of his stats were increased by 10%, but his hero stats were conversely reduced by 10%. His special skills, field selection, and dueling had weakened him. The situation for the hero became extremely disadvantageous. However, special conditions for skill synthesis appeared. Simply put, when copying is not advantageous, the conditions are adjusted to the changing situation. Copying is possible after a skill is obtained. Thus, our hero has copied the opponent's ability, Class C Sword Song. The swordsman's skills are enhanced by 200%, and the hero's body begins to use sword fighting techniques, which also greatly enhances his perception. The enemy began to advance, shouting, "You're ignoring me again. Don't melt or I'll kill you in one hit." The hero meanwhile pulled out his dagger and began to fend off the enemy's attacks. The opponent didn't understand and asked, "What are you counting on? You're fighting at a medium distance after all. Why are you only using your dagger?" But the hero thought that it would be enough. After all, sword fighting was also interesting. After saying that, the guy started going crazy, shouting the same thing, "You're underestimating me." With that, he activated another skill, the level 6 Sword Soul. The guy became more than a little angry and started attacking the hero with sword streams. "Aren't you trying too hard, using higher techniques to fight a newcomer?" asked the hero to that scary guy. Huh, but that made it even more infuriating. "It's you, newbie, what kind of nonsense are you talking about?" Began to stupidly yell like a slashing. Funny moment. The hero turned his attention to his sword and noticed that if he continued to parry his attacks, the dagger would be finished. That meant it was time to use it, a skill that could counter the sword. He began to combine the sword song and the demon soul. With a movement of his hand, he performed an out-of-rank synthesis, combining the abilities sword song and demon soul. Oh, and how hot it became. The enemy couldn't look in the hero's direction because of the bright light coming from the blade. The hero had gotten a little overzealous and gained a unique C-class ability. It was like the graveyard of swords. The hero's skills became 500% stronger. The body now only used the most effective sword techniques, and perception was at its maximum. One of the abilities required to obtain the title of Demonic Swordsman. The ability that the hero received gives out barely a tenth of the total power. He realized that he doesn't have enough mana to control this power. The hero's next goal would be to increase its supply properly. The enemy was dumbfounded at how powerful it was. He chose the most convenient battlefield for him. And yes, he tries not to fight at close range. However, why couldn't he defeat him now? That was the only thing that was of interest. What would be the opponent's next move? 1-1, 1-1, both in and out of the game. He was doing everything to win. The hero developed strategies that were supposed to help him. But nothing worked. Time after sitting in his apartment and looking at the wall with posters and ropes, he kept drawing and writing out what move he would use. Asked many questions, grumbled, but the bottom line didn't change. Why can't he top it? I will not accept this. Our hero's opponents started attacking more and more, but he didn't expect the hero to be able to parry his attacks. Although with the big difference in level, the hero was many steps above his opponent. He had already fought opponents that far surpassed his opponent in strength, but now he was bored with this battle due to the fact that he was faster than a bullet. The hero moved behind his opponent's back. Swinging his dagger, the opponent wanted to block the attack, but no such luck. His sword instantly flew further away, and his opponent fell to the ground with a great crash. Our hero defeated him again. He couldn't even remember how many times it was, but his opponent counted each defeat. 138 times he lost. This battle was the 138th. Kill me, he said, but the hero didn't want to do it. Then there will be a 139th victory in the future, he said. You know yourself that the Tower of Trials is no joke. Even the strongest nerds sometimes die here by carelessness. Life is hard, any way you look at it. But we need strong players, and persistent ones like you even more so, the hero said and held out his hand to his opponent. The guy sitting on his knees couldn't understand what the hero was saying about him and whether he was a strong player. But the hero started trying to befriend his attacker for a reason. He needed another 60 days to copy the player's abilities once more. Why would he waste his energy looking for him when he can make sure the target to copy is always nearby? And the hero activates the ability to communicate. The guy, as he got up, immediately turned around and started walking away. In response, the hero started saying that he admits defeat this time, but wants the guy to remember that next time, the outcome will be different. I'll wait with a smile, the hero replied. The effect of the battlefield selection skill was cancelled. By the way, I still don't know your name, do I? The guy said to the hero. And why would you? Replied the hero. But the lad did not like that answer, and to what was said he said, then I'll call you what I used to call you. Like before. No, don't you dare. Began to shout at the hero. Stinky, his in-game nickname had been misinterpreted before. Teresa, hearing this, smiled. But the hero didn't really like it, so he decided to tell him his name after all. The squad leader heard one of his soldiers start to say that the scanning artifact had detected something unknown. And although he was sure that there shouldn't be anything left after they had destroyed all the monsters, they started to see an object moving towards them. As soon as they raised their heads, they saw an iron golem with a strange creature sitting on its shoulder. The squad leader, as soon as he looked at it, realized what the image was. It was a supreme vampire who descended from the goblin's shoulder and began to worship them, thus welcoming the dear guests who had come to their home. After he greeted the players, he began to say that his name was Baluz, and he was accompanying the owner of these ruins, Lord, one of the blood relatives. The boys immediately bared their blades and pinned the vampire against the wall. Why did you come here? They asked. You didn't just decide to meet us, did you? The leader of the group asked. The vampire didn't like that and immediately surrounded me. What's with the ill-manneredness? He said. He arrived at them with a suggestion. Either you follow me without bickering, or half of you will come with me and I will eat the rest. At this moment, he activated his blood plague skill. What's wrong with my body? Shouted the leader of the guys. The vampire was quite strong. With a smile on his face and red eyes, he captured everyone around him. Here we are shown another squad that was in another building. Tony was sitting and Teresa was using her level 5 Saint's power skill. With the ice tier, she could enhance magic when absorbed, but if she didn't apply purification, she could seriously injure or harm players. Obtained along with the demon's soul, the ice tier is quoted and cannot be used immediately after receiving it. But thanks to Teresa's holy power, our hero had already gotten 12 stats, and everything worked out. Our hero was satisfied. After the invitation from the master of the abode, Teresa and the hero received the description. If you want to save the members of your group, go to the farthest room. Upon accepting the invitation, all monsters will deactivate. Teresa couldn't believe that the entire squad had been taken hostage. It's mind-boggling to kidnap an entire group. Teresa sprang into action. If she could save even one person, she could not hesitate. Teresa wondered, would they be able to defeat the Lord, or would they simply fall into a prepared trap? Without the raid team, it would be impossible for them to defeat the Lord. Teresa regretted leaving them behind. What would have happened if I had stayed with them then, she thought. She had joined the squad as a paladin. She just wanted to protect the players, but as it was, she had made the wrong choice. The swordsman who was standing to the side had seen all of this too, but it had nothing to do with him. So he was about to go, but before leaving, he said a few words to Teresa. If you're having a hard time making a decision, then think about what I'm going to tell you. That man doesn't have an ounce of honor. He's simply selfish. He can't even recognize his opponent. That's why I hate him so much. But I can guarantee you, if anyone can defeat the Lord, it's him. I've told you everything. Now I'm leaving and you don't die out there. Teresa immediately smiled. She appreciated that swordsman's advice. She approached our hero and said she would accept an invitation from him. But the hero questioned, will she overpower him? His services cost a great deal. But she didn't care. She was willing to pay everything she had just to save the squad. Our hero was in agreement. The quest was accepted, and the monsters that were on their way to the boss room went into hibernation. They approached the boss room, and there was such a volume of mana that Teresa felt uneasy. But the hero said that she shouldn't be scared. After that, they got a glimpse of the enemy. It's not always the strongest wins the battle. Teresa asked the hero if he had a plan, and heard that he knew what to do, no matter how it happened. She must trust and believe in him. They entered the Lord's room, where they saw many vampires standing in a circle, with Lord Alice Vaughn sitting on a throne at the very end. Here we are at last, she said. I was so tired of waiting for you. The hero immediately asked if the people she had kidnapped were alive. With a snap of her fingers, she said, see for yourself. A squad appeared, sitting tied up and with their eyes closed. The hero looked at them and used his abilities, thereby realizing that it was the leader who would awaken the guards. Lord began to say that she invited the hero to visit her because of the smell that came from him. The sweetness she felt for the first time was the smell of his blood, which couldn't be compared to the smell of other people. It was a very sweet smell that turned her on. The hero is a bit dumbfounded as to why she is talking about the smell of blood. After all, there was never anything like that before when he was here. Are you alarmed? Asked the Lord to our hero, to which she replied, how can a vampire talking about blood be calm after hearing that? The Lord began to reassure the hero not to worry and told him that she would enjoy him slowly. He would live for at least 60 more years, which meant she would be able to use it for a long time. The hero thanked her for her concern, but said he didn't want to live like he was an expensive lunch. With a quick movement, the Lord struck a blow that made the hero's cheek bleed. Your opinion doesn't matter, she replied. You just don't have a choice. No one gave you a choice, she repeated. Are you okay? Teresa asked. The hero was scared. The hero began to explain that he wasn't just talking. He's willing to give the Lord something on sweet blood. Teresa didn't realize what the hero was doing. The Lord smiled and said that no matter what he sucked up, nothing is more important to them than blood, and no matter what he offers, her opinion won't change. You confidently replied with a snide smile. Hero, even if I offer you freedom. The vampires that were in the audience started screaming in one voice from hearing that. How dare he say that? Yes, we'll tear you to pieces, you little bug. They were ready to attack the hero, but the Lord stopped them and told the hero that he had better back up his words with deeds before she finally finished him off. The hero began to explain that if he wasn't responsible for his words, he simply wouldn't have come here. Lord began to listen to his words and decided to hear him out after all. My name is Kong Jin Hek, the hero said, and as the representative of the mains, I swear that I will set you free. The mains were those who turned their backs on the humans because of money, revenge, and personal beliefs. They prevented players from climbing the tower and helped the monsters in the mazes and ruins. The Lord was interested. He had heard of them. And when he saw our hero putting on his mask, he asked, you mean you are one of them? The hero replied that he had made the connection to the temple on the 27th floor and that it was here, and knew how to cheat the barrier that covered the ruins. All of this was told to him there in the temple. Teresa couldn't believe her ears, what that could mean, and more importantly, why he said he was a main and why everyone got excited when they heard about the temple. The Lord immediately replied, since you know about the temple, then it's not a bluff. The hero thought she believed him. She rose abruptly from her throne, and the blood that was at her feet began to rise with her. What does it matter if you're a main or not? For centuries, they hire vampires have remained locked up here, so it's all just talk. And since she doesn't like talkers, he'll have to die. The Lord started to activate the blood orb skill. She decided to finish off the hero with the words, "Your blood smelled so sweet. Sorry about that. Die." 1,000 bloody swords started flying towards the hero who was standing in front of her. But suddenly Teresa appeared and activated the power of a saint, thus creating a barrier. Teresa held back the Lord's attack and ordered the hero not to come out. She believed her barrier would hold, but the bloody pikes and swords were very much in evidence. Teresa was putting her full weight against the Lord's usual attack. The Lord was starting to get angry. She hated everything holy. That's when she decided to activate the Blood Blast skill, thereby destroying them in one blow. Teresa didn't know how long she would last. The Lord's usual attacks were strong, but she believed it was a stab in the back. Gene Hack, shouted she. Our hero stabbed her through with his dagger. The Lord, seeing this, smirked. The hero stood next to Teresa, who was lying on the floor bleeding. If I prove to you that this is simply not a bluff, will you believe me? How interesting, said the Lord. You betrayed a comrade who protected you. But that is not enough. If you prove it with something else, then perhaps I'll believe you. Teresa, bleeding, took hold of his leg and said her last words. We promise to save the squad members. Is this your plan? With that, the hero swung his dagger and finished Teresa off. The Lord was ecstatic at what he saw. Not bad, human, she said. Now I realize you're on my side. I trust you. Now you have a chance to explain yourself, said the hero, and began to explain, which would fool the barrier that was preventing them. He prepared a special spell. What I hold in my hands is the Brahma ring, and if we place your soul in this ring, we can cheat the barrier for a little while. Lord didn't understand. This was the first time she had heard of sealing a soul. The reason why the hero gave up all experience points and stayed at level 1 was because the soul traveling skill could only be activated by a level 1 player. The hero had traveled such a long way to be here, and to do this, he started to activate the soul relocation magic circle. He could only seal the soul once, and the recharge of the skill was 365 days. Everything was ready. All that was left was to get the Lord's consent. The hero stood in the circle with his arms outstretched and said that if in a minute this magic circle would disappear forever, if you gave your consent, the spell would work. It was up to you to decide what you would choose. The Lord stood and turned to her loyal servant, ordering him that she didn't trust him completely yet, so if he did anything suspicious, kill him and destroy the magic circle. The Lord had one last step to make. She was reluctant to put her life in his hands, but she had lived too long in confinement. It had been over 1,000 years. If not now, she may never get out of this dungeon. The Lord asked one last time, can she trust the hero? To which she heard, if you trust me, you will not regret it. The Lord extended his hand to the hero, who bowed his head in front of her, at which point the hero specifically applied the communication skill. The target immediately showed interest in our hero. I, Alice von Ataraxia, authorized the soul transference. After her consent, the process began to take place and the Lord's soul was imprisoned in the Brahma ring. The process was complete and the Lord thought she would be uncomfortable in the ring, but it turned out to be cozy. The hero picked up the ring and was pleased that she liked her new home. Fiction's new home, she said. Immediately afterward, the ability Heaven's Protection activated and Teresa rose from the floor. Welcome back, the hero said towards Teresa. He knew of her skill that could bring back the fallen, instant death being the exception. The recharge of the skill was 240 hours. Teresa slowly got to her feet and came to her senses. With a smile on her face, she approached the hero. The hero began to turn his mask into a regular monochrome mask, as he didn't need it anymore. At this time, the Lord who was imprisoned in the ring began to resent. How dare he speak to her like that? Bemise, kill the vile deceiver, she shouted. Teresa had many questions, but she realized it was better to ask them later, to which the hero agreed, as now is not the time or place. Bemise sprang into action with the words, foolish humans, do you think you'll stay alive after betraying my master? He began to activate the Blood Moon skill. The hero and Teresa were in danger, you would think, but the hero activated the Fire Element skill and hit back with the same force as the enemy. The hero then asked Teresa to take care of the squad members while he dealt with the vampires. Teresa used the cross skill to free the squad that was bound by the spell. She started with the guild leader, and after she freed him, he was happy to see them. The guild head asked what was going on with the vampires, and Teresa pointed to our hero who was dealing with them alone. Bemise attacked the hero, but couldn't understand how he was able to repel his attack. The hero explained that his magic and fire extinguished the enemy's attack. However, he did not yet realize that once their mistress, probably the guild leader, was imprisoned, the situation became more complicated. They had already lost. Enough talking, it was time to call it a day. The hero started to activate the unique ability Graveyard of Swords, but the vampires didn't want to give up. Meanwhile, Bemis activated the dark martial arts skill and replied, "Shut your mouth," he said. "You shallow blood belly. If I couldn't succeed in killing you with magic, I'll succeed with a sword." He ordered the entire ring to be smashed to free their lord, and the vampires began to, but they were so unsuccessful. They were nowhere near as strong as our hero. Meanwhile, the guild leader was standing with Teresa looking at all this and asked Teresa, "Who was this guy?" Teresa thought for a moment before answering and realized that if the character was still wearing the mask, then he didn't want to reveal his identity. She said that she met him by chance and didn't know much about him. The hero approached Teresa and heard her say that she was in pain. It was the first time she had died, so also at the hand of an ally. But they fused, and that's what matters. She thanked the hero for keeping everyone alive. The hero had saved the life of the owner of the unique ability Patronage of the Heavens, and so the conditions were met. The hero had successfully copied her ability, which meant that the divine power would allow him to escape death. Teresa started to sob, but the hero said that it ended well and there was no need to sob. She didn't know why that was, but the tears were pouring out for nothing. Teresa asked the hero, "So it turns out you knew I was going to be resurrected?" To which he abruptly turned around and walked the other way. He said he was glad she survived. The hero offered to already take the relics and get the hell out of this dungeon. But then the raid group leaders showed up and started saying that the rights to the relics from this raid belonged to the guild. The hero got a little angry and said that he saved their lives, and he is also asking for relics. But the head immediately backpedaled and said he misunderstood and would pay him for them in money or whatever. "You won't be shortchanged," he said. The hero didn't like the leader. After defeat, this leader still acts cocky, but if that's the way you want it, take it. But don't complain if the result doesn't satisfy you. The leader rejoiced and ran to the relics, and lying first was a fragment of Merlin's staff. Although the large raiding party of grooms seemed to be held hostage, the chapter thought he could regain authority by bringing in good loot. The head touched the staff and felt as if he had been electrocuted. "What is this?" he said, seeing the cross on his hand. "What curse?" replied the hero. "Though Merlin's staff is a precious relic, it bears a curse. If Alice were to disappear completely, it would be safe. However, Alice is currently trapped in the ring, a stone, with me," the head said, and held his head. Teresa, seeing this, was shocked. The hero knew what was coming next, so he took Teresa's hand and said, "Let's go to the exit already." At this time, the department head and a bunch of press stood near the exit of the dungeon and waited for the raid team of grooms that was to return. The head of the Awakened Association stood near the exit of the dungeon and said that they had received a message that something should work out. The girl standing next to him interrupted him and said that the experts had reported that the raid would last at least another 3 weeks. The boss remembered the words of the guy who said that the takeover of the ruins would be over soon. But the boss didn't tell him to believe it. Suddenly, everyone standing there saw the notification that the ruins of the abode of the fallen had been cleared. The group began to exit through the teleporter. "Oh, it's the party guild," everyone shouted. "Congratulations on clearing the ruins of the first floor." The reporters wanted to quickly learn about the strategy you used and who became the most valuable player of this raid. The raid leader, who had all the hair on his head fall out after the curse, and yes, his eyebrows fell out too. That was the laugh. Everyone wanted to know what happened back there in Nutri, right? "Gentlemen," Teresa said, "the ruins weren't cleaned up by the Sun Shanhua raid. Did the Shongle do that?" "No," she answered. "Our hero came out last and said that this person was compared almost alone, and we were in fact just watching from the sidelines." The head of the association immediately wanted to inform the leader. "Barely survived. We could have just died, but if not for that masked man, it would have been." The broken raid team was walking and thinking. The next day, the news was all about who the masked player was and where he came from because he single-handedly cleared the ruins, and all the guilds started commenting on the situation because he single-handedly cleared that dungeon. But at the same time, Gene Heck was making himself a tasty noodle, and watching the news he immediately found out that it was going to be a topic of discussion. But he had no idea that it would get so big. Delicious noodles and watching all this news, and he knew it was going to be a topic of discussion. But he didn't realize it was going to be blown out of proportion. And it's a good thing he was wearing a mask and no one recognized his face. But the only one who saw her face was Teresa, but she promised to keep it a secret. So Gene Heck decided not to worry about it. And as soon as he'd eaten the rest of the news, he decided it was time to deal with sitting in the ring. And as soon as he put the ring to his ears, he heard Alice start to tell him how dare he put her in a dark and stinking pocket because he should have known who she was well. For a second Jean Heck got bored with her talking and he started twirling the ring around in his hands, and Alice started screaming at him to calm down because she was getting dizzy. As soon as she was quiet, Jean Heck stopped twirling that ring that was on the chain and started asking her if she had come to her senses. But she, who was sitting in the ring, started telling him to put himself in her shoes, think about it, and remember that vampires never forget a grudge. However, he didn't like what she said again, and at that very moment she realized he wanted to do it again and started ordering him to stop. But Jean Heck, with a horrifying smile, began to twist once more and tell her that she still hadn't realized who was in charge. So another explanation is needed, and he started spinning this ring at an unrealistic speed, saying that this is the carousel of death. After 3 hours, he put the ring on the table and Alice started telling him to stop because she was about to die. But at that same second, Jean Heck started telling her to stop roaring and finally went outside. He started to release Brahma from the ring, and that very second she appeared in front of him. As soon as she realized this, she began to say with a smiling smile that the time had finally come and she would give him back this pain 1,000-fold. But what she didn't expect was that she was the size of a small child, and looking at herself, she couldn't realize what was going on. But Jean Heck first told her that he had only taken out and materialized a part of her, and now you could call her a mini version of Alice. Jean Heck went on to tell her that she could now only use 1% of her power, and even though he had put a restriction on it, it was still stronger than a normal vampire. But she started to sit on the floor, sobbing and saying, "What kind of life is this?" But Jean Heck started telling her not to roar, but to listen to what he said. "In ruins to me are empty words," she said. But she didn't want to hear it and started telling him to shut up, because this wasn't the kind of freedom she wanted. And Jean Heck said that he knew, for freedoms were unspeakable, and he would give her real freedom. But she didn't understand what that meant, and he went on to say that if Alice would help him, he would destroy those who had betrayed her and give her back her place as head of the Ataraxia family. And a little later, a new video was added to the honor roll, and Wright, who should have failed. However, the masked player who appeared changed the situation completely, and some viewers watched the video. Even though they already knew the result, their hands were still sweating, and some viewers were scared as he was standing alone in front of the vampires, and they lost knowledgeably from it. But some onlookers noticed that his movements and actions didn't look like a beginner, and his magic and sword techniques were of an incredible level. Our hero, who was reading all these comments, was already standing outside near a large building. Looking at this building, he began to realize that many kids, after all, had a lot of money. And, seeing such a big office, he realized that they did. And as soon as he started to put on his mask, he knew that he wasn't going to get involved in the guild's affairs or the squabbles between them, because he didn't care about them. And as soon as he put his mask on, he kicked out with his foot the door that started to fly to pieces, and he didn't want to do it, but now he had, for he knew that this guild wanted to kill him, and forgive, he wasn't going to do it. After all, for such a thing he would tear them to shreds. And just as our hero began beating up all the staff and all the guards that stood behind those broken doors, the head of the guild was sitting on the upper floors of that building. He started to greet not one of his underlings, but that he was a jerk, and made it clear to him that he should die in those ruins. And what did he do? Woke up the guards and ended up accomplishing nothing because of some asshole they can't handle. They can't be allowed to lose their reputation and maybe cease to exist altogether. The guild leader stood up from his desk and started walking towards that subordinate. He kicked him off his leg, saying that he was a lowly jerk and couldn't do anything properly. And at that same second, the two guards who were standing near the door in the guild leader's office started to hear some kind of knocking on the door. And in that same second, the door exploded from the fire flame that Jean Heck had applied. And as soon as those two guards flew aside, Jean Heck started to go inside the room and asked if he was the master of this guild. But the head at that very second started ordering his underlings to grab him. Suddenly, the guy that the head had recently beaten with his feet appeared. He realized that this was his only chance to restore his honor and his reputation in the face of the head, and he would be called Pak Ha Jen, Super Hands again. And just as he flew towards our hero with his dagger, Jean Heck suddenly took off his mask and said to that guy, "Hi." And as soon as that guy got confused, Jean Heck kicked him in the head, which made him fly into the nearest closet that stood near the wall. Suddenly, the guild leader started yelling that they lost their position in the association because of him. If you think you can just strut around here like this, you're wrong. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments below. But suddenly, the guild master started to reach out his hand for the katana that was on the table, and in that second, he started to use his level 5 sword flash skill. As soon as he took the katana in his hand, he jumped up, stood on the table and started saying, "Are my hero." But his sword is about to be his, and he's sitting so relaxed, and as soon as the sword almost touched our hero's face, the guild master's sword was snapped in half. He didn't understand how this was possible, or how he did it, but Jin Haok had checkers near him, and he started throwing them with amazing speed and power. Once he saw that the guild master had calmed down, he planted his feet that he was ready to start them not talking, and the guild master started shouting that he had come to take revenge because he had ordered him to be killed, and that was the only reason he had destroyed the building. And as soon as the guild master stopped shouting towards Jin Haok, another checker flew straight at the guild master's head, causing him to lose his balance and fall off the table. Jin Haok held out his hand with another checker in it, and he started to say that he didn't think such words were out of place. But the guild master started to say for him to stop it, for it was enough. But Jin Haok didn't understand why he should stop when he was only in the middle of what he had started doing. And the guild master started telling him to be more objective. After all, they had so many rankers who were now in the tower ready to fight. And even if he kills the guild master, many will be after him for revenge, and he doesn't realize what that means. After all, blood for revenge breeds revenge, and until one side asks the other, there will be no end to the bloodshed. But Jin Haok, with more checkers in his hand, began to say that although it sounds strange, it makes sense. He began to think that he would interfere with a restful sleep, so he decided to end it right now. At this very second, Jin Haok's hand that had a lot of the checkers in it started to ignite, and he said that we will take revenge and let the guild side ask and end this war. But the guild master didn't understand what was the point of this, and Jin Haok said, how could it not be understood? After all, this is the guild master's logic. In that same second, our heroes started releasing many fireballs that flew towards the guild master, and just as they began to reach their target, the window that was behind the guild master shattered. The master himself began to fly into that window. A second later, Jin Haok walked over to the window, looked through it, and began to turn around. At that same second, the guy who started attacking him with the knife in the beginning was lying near the window. Jin Haok started telling him that he would let him live because of his little sister, because she had done him a lot of good. The hero started telling that guy that he'd better not get in his face again for the rest of his life. At the same second, Jin Haok turned to the other guy and asked him to stand up and not play dead. And once that guy who had stood for the day was fully up on his feet, Jin Haok started asking him if he could prove himself useful to keep him alive. He had a story to tell about himself. That guy started to say that his name was Kim. He was 26 years old, and he was doing general work in the guild. He studied information technology and accounting at Stanford. He assured me he could get anything he wanted. After that, Jin Haok started telling him that he was hard enough, and as he could see, the situation here wasn't good. Destroying a guild like this isn't particularly profitable, so he wants to hand it over to him. Kim started to get nervous because he didn't understand what he was talking about at first, but Jin Haok immediately started to calm him down, telling him not to worry, and to just become the official representative. Kim replied to him that even if he became a guild master, no one would follow him, and that was correct. An ordinary member of the organization suddenly getting a high position would cause controversy. Jin Haok turned around and added that Kim didn't have to worry about those who wouldn't agree. Kim didn't understand what that could mean and started to ask if he could handle these problems himself. But Jin Haok picked up his ring hanging around his neck and started to say that why would he need to worry too much? He would just lend him something so Kim wouldn't have to worry. At that moment, all the guild members started receiving messages on their phones with information for those guarding the tower. Everyone was supposed to gather on the top floor of the base. The highest ranked guy who was outside Ilya's office started to get angry because the guild master knows that everyone is busy, and suddenly called everyone to the meeting. After all, he was on a raid, and although there were several people, but this was too much, it pissed him off a lot. But suddenly, as soon as he started walking towards the office, he saw a lot of people gathered near some kind of car, and he wondered what was going on there. And as soon as he walked over and shoved all the people around to get a look at what was there, he saw that the guild master was lying on the hood of the car, and he realized that he was dead. He started to get even angrier, and as soon as he got to the top floor he started yelling, "Who gave the order?" And suddenly, he saw Kim sitting at the desk, and at that very second, that guy started attacking him with words about what he was up to. And as soon as he came to the table and grabbed Kim by his tie, he started ordering him to tell everything without leaving out details. But Kim started to say that there was a new owner, and suddenly, that guy saw a little girl standing by the window. It was Alice, and she was standing there looking at all these guys, not realizing if she needed to start this conversation. But that guy kept standing his ground and yelling, "What is this nonsense? After all, that little girl can't run a guild." And at that very second, Alice heard her being called petty and her eyes lit up red. She asked that guy if he was the one who called her petty, and at that very second, an explosion sounded inside the room. Gene Heck, who was standing outside, saw the building he came out of explode and another explosion went off inside. He realized it was Alice, and holding his head up, Gene Heck said, "I like that, for she gave them a fight back from the start, there to destroy everything." And it had been about 2 months since the tower had appeared, and the world was changing fast, and people were quickly adapting to the changes. A masked man was shown on the news. He sparked interest by single-handedly mopping up ruins that large units couldn't handle, and only 2 people knew who was behind the masked man. The former porter, indeed, was Gene Heck, and one of those men was the leader of the porters, Uncle Kim. He asked him to keep it a secret. Teresa also made a promise to keep his secret. Now there are 2 people, the one with the mask and the one without it. In this way, it will be easier for him to act. A little later, in the Awaken Association, all the preparations were finished and there were no more restrictions. Once inside the Awaken Association, player Gene Heck decided for himself that it was time for his power to come, with which he would do whatever he wanted and no one would be able to stop him. A little later, when Gene Heck received his certificate of being an Awakened One, he was assigned rank F. He began to look at this certificate, and it appeared to be quite simple to him. But at that moment, he heard someone call out to him. And as soon as he turned around, he saw his friends standing downstairs, and they started to say that they were pumped up a bit. Plus they noticed that the guy standing next to him said they knew him. So they talked for a bit and Gene Heck said he could officially introduce them. He started to introduce Alice and said she was a player from Northern Europe. But he didn't really want to tell them that she was a vampire, because that might cause a panic. The second was Kim, who had been appointed as the guild manager of the Black Raven Guild. He would be exploring the dungeons and helping them with pumping. Kim started to say that if they all knew Director Kong, he would help them in any way he could. And at this point he cried, for he began to compare to how he was exploited by the past guildmaster. Now for him to be treated like this was simply a reward. And Gene Heck started telling all the guys that if they needed anything, they should ask him. But his friends didn't understand how he was able to become the master of the Black Raven Guild. Gene Heck answered them that according to the documents, the guildmaster was Mr. Kim, but it was actually him. Immediately after saying that, his friends were excited about this information and began to rejoice that they were friends. As soon as they approached Mr. Kim to talk to him, Gene Heck was alone with Alice and started asking her why she blew up the floor of the building. But she started to get nervous and replied that they were the first ones to start it and she didn't want it to come to that. But Gene Heck started telling her that in her opinion it was okay to destroy a building just because she was called a baby. But she started shaking her head and saying that after living thousands of years, you can't hold your own. And no one just dared call her that. And at the same moment Gene Heck told her that he understood and suggested that she go out and hunt. Alice, however, was not thrilled with the idea. She began to ask why he couldn't go and hunt alone. To which Gene Heck told her that it was a pen hunt and he needed support. But Alice didn't know what he was talking about, or what a pen hunt was, or if there were any places left to hunt. And Gene Heck started telling her that there were still places left, even though the 3rd floor had been cleared and the 4th floor hadn't been opened yet, and the most valuable dungeon was under guild control. And everyone thought that there were no more good places to leave. But Gene Heck still knew one more place, and soon he was already on the 1st floor of the Moon Lake Tower. And this place was known for having the most beautiful scenery outside. But for that reason, no one came here anymore. And as he walked along the beach, Gene Heck noticed that he hadn't been here for a long time. And the fate of all mankind was hanging in the balance, and there was no way to enjoy the views. So he thought, I'm walking down the beach, but Alice started to ask that it's scenic, right? But how does he want to get together to hunt here? And Gene Heck told her to just look, but she didn't want him to go into the lake, because she thought the water might get in the ring too. Decorating the calm moon lake, and there were 12 statues, but Gene Heck walking through the water started looking for just the right statue, and as soon as he saw this statue, he realized that it wasn't just a decoration, it had another function. Alice started to ask if there was some secret button in this statue, but Gene Heck told her that if only it were that simple. After all, there are only 3 players who have discovered this secret, and very rarely do they share it in the community. But no one had been able to find the right key, and that was understandable, because it was an unusual key moonlight. Using your fingers, you have to adjust the amount and angle of the light, and when the system starts to react to the reflection of the light, you have to push a little, and then slowly the entrance will start to open. And just as the passage to the lower floor began to open, Jean Heck, along with Alice, began to walk inside. Once downstairs, the system let them know that they had gotten to the first floor of the testing tower. Alice began to look around, for she didn't know what could be underneath the tower. This was the kind of thing, and she hadn't felt it in a long time. It felt like forgotten freedom. Jean Heck, who came up to her, began to ask her how she felt and was glad she had made the contract. But she turned around abruptly and started to say that she was willing to have a little faith. Walking down the stairs, Jean Heck began to apply heaven's protection and activated the sacred power, preparing for the second stage of unfreezing. Frozen tears, and his mana immediately increased by 18%. But he would only be able to use it again after 24 hours, and he only had 70 attempts left. He began to realize that after reabsorbing the icy tears it was easier to control Alice, and if you think about it that way, what does she think about their hands being in the tower? And while most know that the game has become a reality, Alice, who has lived for 1,000 years, thinks she is only part of the game. Jean Heck decided to ask her something, and just as he wanted to say something forbidden, his body started to change and his words were jumbled. He realized how it was happening, and what was concerning the tower was blocked. Jean Heck realized that this attempt was not in vain, for at least he realized that he could not discuss with those who lived inside the tower. At the same moment, Alice began to notice that something was approaching them, and as soon as Jean Heck turned around, he saw some strange tentacles that began to appear out of the darkness and move towards him. He used to call the minuscule first floor of the tower a spawning cave, and the reason for that was because a lot of monsters were hiding in those caves in every corner, and wherever the player's foot went, they would immediately attack him and tore him to pieces. And as soon as Jean Heck used his fire magic, he saw that a multitude and endless stream of monsters emerging from the abyss began to move towards him, and their number couldn't even be counted. After all, they were everywhere, above his head and on different sides of this cave, and one of those scarab beetles, who was level 25, started running straight at our hero. Alice, noticing this, started yelling, "What is that? Very nasty." And Jean Heck told her to get behind him. And at that very second, he activated his unique ability Heaven's Protection, and a huge explosion sounded at that very spot. All monsters within the range of this skill began to lose their physical defense by 30%. Jean Heck at that very second started asking Alice to show her power, but she didn't understand why a noble vampire should have to fight such nasty monsters. And as soon as he started twirling his chain in his hands where the very ring was on the chain, Alice realized that it was better not to argue and started doing everything. She activated her blood path skill, and as soon as all the scarabs were blocked by the vampire's blood, Jean Heck sprang into action. As soon as he pulled out his dagger, he began to use his leap skill and slashed all the scarabs that were in his range. As some scarabs died, his level began to rise very quickly, and Jean Heck thought about how hard it was for him to hold back while he remained at level 1. He had so much stress accumulated. Those scarab beetles surrounded him, and there seemed to be no escape anymore. Jean Heck began to activate his unique sword graveyard ability, and a terrifying energy appeared around our hero. He was very happy about the appearance of these scarabs, because now he could pump at an amazing speed. But at this time, a meeting of the Olympus Guild was taking place in one of the palaces. One of the guild members started to say that he felt like almost everyone was gathered, so he decided to start. The head of the Titan Guild was Frederick, and he began to speak. Everyone already knows that the 8th floor could not be conquered. Out of 100 people divided into 15 squads, there are only 20 people left alive. The boss of the 3rd floor is quite ordinary, but he summons thousands of statues. We need a way to defeat them. And just as the factory finished its work, he heard a loud thumping of his hand on the table. It was Tong, the head of the China Guild, and he started to say that they had failed even by using the divine artifact. He didn't understand how they could get rid of those damned statues. But Maria, who was sitting at the table with him and was the head of the Olympus Guild, started to say that the 2nd and 3rd floors were passed too quickly, and the players had too little time to pump. And if there were more players above level 15, they would easily pass the 3rd floor. Beck, the head of the guild's 3rd squad, agreed that everything was correct and not because they were having problems. He added that you couldn't, for example, monopolize magic crystals like China, but guild leader China started to object, saying that these were serious accusations. However, Beck didn't realize what he said wrong. And guild leader China went on to say that they were just passing the tower for the sake of humanity and wouldn't tolerate insults. He added that those weren't even excuses, but the guild leader Olympus ordered them to stop because the only thing they needed was infighting. They all gathered to solve another problem, and yesterday he got a message from Maine. If they fulfill one condition, they will help them. But the other guild heads didn't really want to cooperate with them. After all, they were all internationally wanted, and they couldn't work with lowlifes like them. But Teresa, who was standing nearby and was a loner, began to think about the fact that they were all afraid to interact with Maine. And it was no wonder. After all, the influence of the guild was already above that of the government. And the greater the influence, the more important morality became, and they should all act with that in mind. But suddenly, the entire guild leader and Teresa heard some voice saying that they were all lowlifes, and they didn't like hearing it. The thing is good, and from the fire that was burning in the fireplace, some objects started to appear, which attracted more and more attention, and the guild heads and some strange man appeared who was dressed in black and had a hood over his head. Because of that, his face couldn't be seen. He started telling the whole guild that they already knew they couldn't do it on their own. One of the heads started talking to the man. How the hell did Maine dare to come here? If he came here by himself, then he should be killed. Immediately after saying those words, he threw the table towards that mysterious man who had appeared, but suddenly that one was intercepted in midair and cut by some other player. That player started to say that he was agreeing with Mr. Beck for the first time. The mysterious man stood up and began to speak. All of you are hotheads. But after hearing the proposal, you will change your mind. You must cooperate with the group, because that's the only way you have a chance to deal with the third floor boss. However, the man who threw the table continued to shout that it was all nonsense. He believed that even by teaming up with 100 people, they wouldn't be able to deal with a huge army. But the mysterious man began to say that it was possible to create that number, and suddenly he began to use his skills as the guardian of the black graveyard. Right from the floor where all the heads were standing, some skeleton-like creature began to appear, and a multitude of skeletons followed him. A mysterious man, a mysteriously thundering warrior. There were a lot of useful corpses here, and as you can see, there were many strong ones among them, such as the necromancers of the Needle Guild of Olympus. After all this, Olympus didn't understand how a necromancer could summon so many soldiers. But suddenly he saw the staff held by that mysterious man, and he began to guess what kind of staff it was. After all, it could be created with only 99% of the material. This staff of greed, if you combine the necromancer and the staff of greed, there might be a chance to deal with the third floor boss. But the girl who was standing next to her started saying that they were all carrying. After all, how can you mess with the bloody minds? And the guild leader, Beck, started saying that they know everything and Maria is right and it would be right to kill him right now. But if the public doesn't find out about the pact, then the game is worth the candle. The one standing next to her realized that there was no other choice now, because things had turned out this way. Collaboration with Maine is impossible. It felt like everyone in this room had lost their minds, and she thought about the fact that if player Jean Heck was here, none of this would have happened. And she began to think about what she could do. I mean, cooperate with them or not. Or was there no other choice right now? But suddenly, she saw a notification window in front of her that said there was a request for a video call from Jean Heck. As soon as she took the call, she saw Jean Heck, who started to ask how she was doing and if she was rocking slowly. But suddenly he saw some strange situation that was in that room where Teresa was, and that mysterious man heard Teresa talking to someone on the Esvesco video, and he started turning around in her direction, asking who it was. Since he had already raised his voice, he should show his countenance, and Jean Heck began to switch the call mode on the conference call. Suddenly, everyone in the room saw a mysterious guy who was wearing a mask. I didn't realize that it was that person. That unknown person who had cleared the first floor dungeon. The incredible player who had cleared the dungeon single-handedly and remained unknown to anyone had become the object of interest of major guilds from all over the world. They were eager to get their hands on this player, and so, this super rookie appeared in front of them. They made considerable efforts to contact him. Everyone concerned had their mouths dry with joy because of his unexpected appearance. But the mysterious man began to smile. He was curious. He too had heard about the masked guy, the one who had cleaned out the first floor dungeon, and he began to tell what he knew about the fact that there would be an attempt to capture a completely different boss this time. Jean Heck asked him if it was true that he wanted to defeat this boss who had settled on the third floor. The mysterious man replied that it was correct. He started to point out that there were a lot of conscripted soldiers outside the window. He decided that it would be enough. Also, the heads of the guilds gave their consent. But Jean Heck was surprised by this, and he began to ask the mysterious man if he was sure he could handle this single staff. After all, the heart of the holy prison formation was dipped in ale, and he had created it without these two items. But the mysterious man continued to remain silent and listen. Suddenly, the head of the Olympus Guild intervened in the conversation and asked if he had proof that this was the case. Jean Heck began to say that real staffs of greed have a red stone under the skull, and the open floors lack some of the materials needed to create a real staff. Everyone should take a close look at the summoned zombies. These soldiers are too weak. They can't even last a quarter of a day in the boss's room, and he thinks that in case of danger he'll just leave everyone behind and run away with the loot like a typical rogue. But the man's puzzled face changed drastically as soon as he heard this, and he started to say that Jean Heck is a cheeky guy. And at the same moment, Jean Heck started to use his staff of greed and said that they would all regret not accepting his offer, and would they all be just as calm the next time they met, because he would be watching everyone. And as soon as he finished, all the soldiers who were around and he himself disappeared. Guild head Skirting stood there not understanding what they should do now, but Jean Heck explained to him that they could leave the third floor to him and they wouldn't have to cooperate with the Minas. He's taking responsibility for the operation. And the head realized that what he meant to say was that he could handle it alone. And Jean Heck confirmed that's exactly what will happen. And the guild head standing in that room reflected that even if he didn't succeed, he would at least be closer to them. And unlike the Mana deal, this had no serious downsides, and one shouldn't miss such a good moment. And all the guild heads, as if the clutches had snapped, began to offer their payment as a sign of help. They kept arguing over who would financially support the mysterious masked player. But Jean Heck replied that he didn't need anything. After all, if they all restricted the entrance of other players and let him go through alone, then he didn't need a reward. But the girl didn't understand why he needed it. After all, what he said made them doubt, and they wanted information on what the reason was. And Jean Heck answered them that the reason is because he is just doing what he needs to do, but also for the sake of other things, for his co-workers and Teresa. As soon as she heard this, Teresa started to blush. But on the other side of the screen, Jean Heck was uncomfortable, as he didn't want to squeeze out so much mental pathos. And one of the guild heads began to tell him that he admired such camaraderie, and as a guild representative, he had nothing to add. After all, the masked player's words had touched him deeply, but Jean Heck realized that ordinary players would have asked for a good payment. But here, it was worth thinking about the prospects. After all, a player who sacrifices the reward for the sake of his comrades would be able to get much more than what he would have been paid thanks to those words. He's not allowed to conflict with girls, so he uploads this video, editing out the moments with Minecraft. And once the video was finished, Jean Heck started looking at his stats and realized that even though he had only been spawning for a day, his level had already reached 12 and things were going better than he thought they would. But suddenly he heard Alice's voice, and as soon as he turned around, he saw her running away from those bugs and started yelling that you can't leave everything on her. But Jean Heck began to tell her that since she had the strength to bicker, she wouldn't die, for she was too awake to die. Suddenly Alice started acting like an actress and saying that they were not an equal partnership, slavery. But Jean Heck thought that slavery was a baseless accusation, and he started pointing at the system window, saying that he wanted to buy her mana replenishment, but Alice told him that it wasn't enough. That alone wouldn't replenish her powers, and besides, if she ran out of mana, how would she help? Suddenly, her face changed and drool from her mouth. She began to say that she must restore her mana in the traditional way. Jean Heck tried to step back and calm her down, but she came even closer and bit his finger, causing him pain. As she drank blood, Jean Heck became dizzy and wondered how much she had taken in such a short time. But Alice interrupted him, saying that she had recovered her mana and asked what they would do now. Jean Heck replied that they had to stock up first, and as soon as Jean Heck answered her that although it seems like it, even junk is useful sometimes, and from now on we will have a lot of things to do, and we have to clean up the minuscule floor in a day. And as soon as Alice sat on his shoulder, he started telling her to hold on tight, and that very second Jean Heck ducked into a stray hole. And just as they were flying, Alice started asking if he knew the depth, and since he just jumped like that without thinking. But Jean Heck has jumped into that hole over 100 times, so he definitely knows. And once Jean Heck realized that they were almost there, he ordered Alice to use his reverse gravity skill, and they landed on the ground that very second. Alice started to tell him that he was so reckless and she didn't know if it was luck or skill at work. But Jean Heck didn't want to stand still. At that very second, he walked over to one of the torches, activated his element, and after that, he started telling Alice that everything was fine. After all, they had come to the right place, and such weak insects that are in this dungeon would not be able to defeat them. Jean Heck stood in front of the large stone statue and began to tell her not to make him stand up. Let her better decide for herself. And you have heard, there was a hound running with a Chinaman in the desert, whose name was Anubis, and he had great power that ordinary players would never be able to handle. Anubis began to tell Jean Heck that he was the first man to come down here and universal. He wanted to have some fun first, but he was nearing his death, and Jean Heck began to answer him that he didn't come here to chat, but was waiting for him to attack. After saying that, Anubis started laughing very loudly and said that magnificent Anubis would personally engage him in battle. Yeah, he's funny, but Alice flew up and said that he was very dangerous and she would try to deal with him. Jean Heck had better leave. But it was entertaining for Anubis, and he began to activate his ability, Anubis Judgment, and ask questions. Jean Heck did he learn about Anubis from that vampire, and Jean Heck always knew he was using this ability on an opponent. When you answer his questions, the absolute negotiation of Anubis's court is activated, and the notification system has shown that the conditions of the occupation are to destroy Anubis's incarnation, the receptacle of his consciousness, and take him out. Jean Heck began to realize that if he took himself out of balance, he would gain the power through which he could ask questions and did not have to answer them precisely. Short answers would suffice. He said that was right, because how would he know about this place? I began to ask a second question. Why did he come here for the hive? Jean Heck answered that of course he was after it at the black market. They would give a lot of money for it. Asked the last third question, if he came here about her on his territory, and if he thinks he can stay alive. Jean Heck said that if he couldn't win, the only thing left to do was to throw away all his belongings and die. And at the same time, all the conditions were met, and Anubis's judgment began to activate, and all of the player stats were reduced by 50%, and abilities and skills were sealed for 1 minute. And suddenly, Anubis began to say that a representative would now be needed for the judgment, and Anubis chose a mantis that was standing nearby, and appointed it as the representative. And the big mantis, who was as usual on what to pretend to be a huge monster, and it without beginning said that he was going to pass judgment on him. But Jean Heck had a backup plan up his sleeve and began to tell Anubis that this was impressive. And at the same moment, he summoned a musical instrument and started saying that it would still be enough for him. It was a magical gramophone, and it plays the selected music once and cannot be turned off until the music is over. But it didn't understand without comprehension what kind of human music it was and whether it wanted to cloud the representative's mind. But Jean Heck began to answer Anubis that the mind should be given to him entirely. The perfect music he found by trial and error, and a rhythm that fit the attack patterns of the mantis perfectly. And as always, one must follow the rhythm and control this battle. But he couldn't believe the fact that he was leaving the pot attack, using the music. And it's definitely a failure. It's a precise calculation. And Jean Heck, although tired, he started to realize that about now it was almost 1 minute past, and he could use his skills again. And the restriction time was up, and he easily started to destroy that mantis, cutting it into pieces. But he knew that he wouldn't be able to destroy it completely. After all, it regenerates in seconds. If he with a new passion, his powers would come to an end. But that was the plan. Jean Heck began to speak. After all, right now he can't kill this praying mantis, but he can make it not want to live. And as soon as he began to cut off its paws, the mantis began to scream with a terrifying scream. And Alice, who I was watching all of this, began to realize that Jean Heck was just playing with Anubis. Even though she knew he was powerful, he wasn't that powerful, and she began to think that maybe if it was him, he would help her exact her revenge. Alice's thoughts were interrupted by Anubis, who started yelling throughout the cave about what he was doing, and why he wasn't fighting him. But Jean Heck, who was slowly approaching the mantis, began to say that he is the proud warrior chosen by God, the representative, and the last stage. He is destroying his great warrior, the belief in his own invincibility. It is humiliation and provocation. As soon as he sat on the head of the mantis, the notification system showed that the representative of Anubis had been defeated, for the mantis could not win, and he could not accept it. And so, as he was fed up with it, he cut off his head. And right after that, his level increased and the notification system showed that the magic tome and the duchy of Polantris were items that allowed one to learn ice magic after studying it. Jean Heck bent down to pick up this magic book, for he knew that such items could only be found in the middle of the tower floors, and he was only able to obtain all of these things because of monopolization. The notification system showed that he had obtained a level 1 ice creation skill. These were not bad gains for him. At this very second, Anubis started to speak and recognized that he was no ordinary person, but he was sure that he couldn't defeat him with this ice. But Gene Heck didn't understand what he was talking about there, because he can't even attack directly and is holed up there on his 42nd floor. And he's talking without beginning, as he realized that only an incarnation is standing in front of him. Why is he challenging just having fun? And right after saying that, Anubis starts losing his temper and saying that he is nothing more than some kind of fun for him.